Okay. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And we've got a show for you today, gang. The big ticket topic today is Trump's deportations, specifically Garcia, accused of being an MS-13 gang member by many in the administration. He was deported initially, they said, by mistake to El Salvador. The courts have ordered him since, the Supreme Court has ordered since for them to facilitate his return, and they've been in a court battle to do so ever since. Today, we're going to talk about that. Is his deportation justified? Is the Trump's policy towards these deportations and how they're handling these deportations in line with the Constitution? Or are they violating the civil rights of the immigrants that they are trying to deport? We're going to talk about it. We got some great guests to talk about it today. Welcome, one and all. Let's get right into it. Pisco, start us off. What you got?
Thank you. I don't think I need to belabor it. It's really simple. The deportation is illegal. Everyone knows it's illegal. There's no dispute that it's illegal. The Supreme Court said 9-0, it's illegal. The Supreme Court acknowledges that the courts have jurisdiction over the case. The only question is what the remedy is and what's going to be done. This conversation, I fear, is going to get distracted into conversations about MS-13, about domestic protective orders, what happened to the general, good character or not good character of Kilmar. But at the end of the day, what I want to know from the people on the other side is, do you condemn the illegal deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia? Should Donald Trump follow the law? In other words, given that it's illegal, and it is illegal, do you think that Trump should follow the law? And would you publicly state that President Trump should bring Kilmar back? And that's it. That's the only thing that matters in this conversation. The rest is, frankly, just irrelevant.
Okay, well, let's get into it and let's see where this goes. Next up, we have New York Shade. He's been on a few times. Welcome back, New York Shade. What do you have?
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Wick. New York Shade here. So Democrats love celebrating the most vile degenerates of our society, whether it's George Floyd, who sold fentanyl, robbed and punched pregnant women, or Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is MS-13 by credible evidence. He dresses like MS-13, was arrested with MS-13, and as the cherry on top, beat the hell out of his wife. And it's all selective outrage, too. You didn't hear a peep from Pisco, for example, about Mark Little, a U.S. citizen who was wrongfully deported under Obama. As a matter of fact, according to NPR, nearly 700 American citizens were accidentally detained or deported by ICE under Obama, a symptom of the sheer scale of his 3.2 million deportations. But of course, Democrats didn't raise concerns then. They only care about an illegal alien now because there's a Republican in the White House. My argument isn't that the Abrego Garcia deportation wasn't a mistake. The administration has already admitted to it. That said, mistakes in process don't erase the fact that alleged gang ties can legally justify deportation. My argument is that the outlier errors will be made when mass deportations happen, whether it's under a Republican or a Democratic administration. If you look at Pisco's X feed, for example, you'd think this case was an anomaly, and we all know that that is just definitionally false.
Okay, well, thanks for being here. We'll get into it, I'm sure, as we go. PrimeCayes, welcome back to the show. What do you have for us today? Uh-oh. Okay, while PrimeCayes...
hello.
Okay, hi.
Yeah. So, okay. I want to take this to, I guess, the longer term vision. Shout out to my friend Pisco here, because he has, I think that certainly a deeper understanding of the law than I do. But I would like to talk about the longer term implications if the Trump administration is allowed to do this, right? Like what levels of brutality that can unleash upon the rest of the populace if you can pick someone up and without any due process, right? An officer can simply state that you are guilty. And then that is enough to have you deported outside of the country. It's not even deportation. It's like language we shouldn't even use, because deportation is a legal process. They didn't go through that legal process. They just straight up disappeared them, right? And so if you can just be disappeared off of U.S. streets without any due process, then who is safe? Certainly not any of the people here, right? Doesn't matter your skin color, your nationality, right? Your citizenship status.
You'll
Well, none of that
protect me,
gets
right,
actually
gang?
proved because it's about due process. You can say, "Well, I'm a citizen and I'm not part of this gang or whatever. I'm not a terrorist, whatever." But if the officer says you're guilty, then you're gone. So I'd like to discuss at some point the long-term ramifications is what this look like if we just say this is okay.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. I will say that I'm safe simply because my wickers here will protect me. Okay, they would die for me. They would jump in front of the deportation officers. But thank you for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Before we get to Aircraft Sparky, $20 from Artemis Fowl. Thank you for the $20 to say, is this the first SCOTUS decision in months that Pisco actually acknowledges as correct? The man has taken dozens of L's from 14th Amendment to Texas border. He has never given the grace and acknowledgement. He was wrong then. Well, thank you for the $20. I'm sure we'll get into it. Aircraft Sparky, without further ado, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jason. Today I am actually looking at this, and I feel that we're in a constitutional crisis. Now, it's probably not from the direction that Wick or Pisco would like to say that it is, but I do believe that we actually have a constitutional crisis coming from both directions. One from the Article 2 executive, basically overstepping their bounds, not following procedures properly. I do believe that the deportation of Abrego Garcia was proper to do, however, illegal under Supreme Court decision because they didn't follow the proper protocol. And the Article 3, tiny tyrants in black robes, the district judges who are overstepping their limits of authority in trying to affect basic international diplomacy. I'm not happy with how these deportations are going, but we'll dive into all this stuff. So let's get into it, Wick.
Okay, well, let's get into it indeed. I guess to start with, right, do we think that the administration is complying with the SCOTUS's order to facilitate Garcia's release from El Salvador prison? Do we think that they are taking steps? Okay, can you elaborate?
Yeah, so the very clear language of the Supreme Court order states that they have to facilitate his release from custody in El Salvador and to inform the district court of the steps that it's doing to do that. But as we heard from Pam Bondi, and has now been sort of acknowledged by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, all they've said is that we're going to sort of remove all domestic barriers to get him into the country. But that is not what the order calls for. The order calls for facilitating his release from custody, not just doing nothing and opening the doors if he happens to arrive at the border, which of course he won't, because this prison is not meant for people to leave it. The Salvadorian president says the only way to get out is through a coffin. And so in order for him to actually be released, it seems, by the way, that everyone on this panel, and I want to confirm this actually, agrees that this was illegal and that Trump should bring him back. Does everyone agree with that?
No, I agree that the deportation was illegal. However, I do not believe, as the Supreme Court affirmed, that he does not have to bring him back. That's why they said they had to facilitate the return.
Should he
That's why he said facilitate the return, where you and Wick both have said that they have to, under Supreme Court
Jason, I asked the question, should he be brought back? Not can the court order him to be brought back. Should he be brought back under the law?
No. He's been
Why
deported.
not?
Because he's been deported.
The court has said that it was improper to deport him and that they should try to bring him back. So
incorrect. Incorrect. No.
Let's go. What's the definition of... Go ahead.
So the only thing the Supreme Court said is that it was an illegal deportation. However, they did not say that he needed to return. The reason why is because he had a standing deportation order from 2019. It has already been adjudicated. His due process actually is well over the minimum standard of which illegal immigrants are afforded, by the way.
Do you deny that the Supreme Court said that they should and affirmed a portion of the court order below, the district court order, that said that they need to facilitate his return? You deny that?
No.
What's the
they need to
definition of
facilitate his
facilitate?
Release.
I take the ordinary usage of the word facilitate to bring something about in a more to help bring something about, basically.
No, that's not it. It's to make easy or easier.
So you're taking a dictionary definition from something you just Googled. I just Googled it to check that all you're doing for your legal analysis is literally Googling the word. Is that what?
No,
you
I'm
just
looking
did?
at
Well,
the
the word
original
is-
order
okay,
given
hold
by
on,
judges.
hold on.
I just want to be clear. Is
Are
it the case that,
you denying that the
is it-
word?
is it
Hold
the
on,
case-
no.
Is it the case? Is it the case that you literally just Googled the word facilitate, and as part of your legal analysis, you just looked at the Google definition? Is that right?
Or are you
Is
trying?
that what you did? Yes or no? Is that what you did? Yes or
Are
no?
you going to calm down?
You got to let him
Is that
answer.
what you
New
did,
York
yes or no?
Shade.
Are you going to calm down?
Give an answer.
Is your argument that the word facilitate isn't up to legal interpretation?
That's a question. That's not an answer to what I said.
Okay, well,
So did you just do that?
yeah. Why wouldn't I? It's up to my interpretation of it.
Yeah. So do you agree that facilitate is an active verb?
Yes, an action
That-
or process to make it easy or easier. It doesn't mean
Right.
return him to the United States.
So, no. But you agree that facilitate can't mean do.
I know what
nothing,
you're doing,
right?
pulling this ruling from the Fourth Circuit
So you
judge
agree?
ruling.
Do you
It's bullshit.
agree? Do you agree that facilitate can't mean do nothing? Right? You agree with that?
There's nothing to do because he hasn't been
Wait,
released.
I asked you. Is it?
He hasn't been released. There's nothing to facilitate.
So it says facilitate his release from custody in El Salvador. You agree with that?
That is
Sure,
what Supreme
but
Court
it's
says.
not.
Okay,
But it
and
is
do you
not
agree-
up to
and
the
do you
United
agree
States.
and do you agree that facilitate can't mean whatever it means? It can't mean do nothing, right? You agree with that?
No, because he's not been released, so there's nothing to facilitate.
Wait. I just want to be clear. It says to help facilitate his release. It doesn't say wait for his release. It says to facilitate his release. So I'll ask you again. Can facilitate
Does
mean
the U.S. have jurisdiction
I'll
in
ask you-
El Salvador?
So that's a different
Does
question.
Does the U.S. have jurisdiction?
we
in
gotta
El
take one
Salvador?
at a time.
No,
One
it
time.
Let's not be clear. The answer is yes. The Supreme Court heard this case. That is an assumption of jurisdiction. The fact that they took the case and ruled on the case proves definitively that they asserted jurisdiction. So the Supreme Court has held that the jurisdictional argument that the government was trying to push has been rejected. The only question is the remedy. So I'm going to ask you again. I'm going to see if you're going to answer it. Can facilitate mean do nothing?
Yes.
So facilitate. So just to be clear, he thinks facilitate can mean do nothing. That's what you
Correct.
think that the court, that one operable, a totally acceptable version of what the Supreme Court said could be do nothing.
If he gets released from the El Salvadorian prison, then I would support Trump facilitating the return of this person.
It did not say if he gets released. It says facilitate specifically his release from custody. It says to
Okay.
facilitate the release from custody.
Okay,
Wait,
okay.
do you agree with that? Wait, I just want to be clear. It does say facilitate the release from custody, correct? New York Shade?
Yes, that's what it says, but you're interpreting it
can't
incorrectly.
that can't mean do nothing to bring about his release from custody and just wait for it to happen if it
What,
happens,
what
right?
do you suggest he? What do you suggest he does?
I'm not. No. Wait, we're just gonna get an answer. We're just
Well,
gonna get an
I
answer
do
here,
want to.
right?
I do want to get. I do want to get.
you're
more
just doing
people
this
into
crazy
by
like
the way.
interrogation thing. It's
Crazy.
fucking stupid.
You said that facilitate could mean do nothing in this context.
Correct. There's nothing to facilitate.
Okay, I do want to get. I do want to give the mic to. I know PrimeCayes been trying to get in here, but I do want to give New York Shade a chance to actually ask some questions as well. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna go and give it to New York Shade first, and then we're gonna give it to PrimeCayes next, and that's the order we're gonna go in. Cool.
Yeah. What do you suggest Trump actually does to return him
How
from
about
another
he
nation?
How about he asked Bukele to bring him back? That's something he could do, right?
Bukele said in the Oval Office he's not doing it.
No, wait. Has Trump asked for him back? Yes or no?
I don't know. I don't know what happens behind closed doors.
So is the answer you just said is you don't know?
Well, you don't know
Right?
either.
Well, he hasn't.
Of course we
they have
do.
not.
How do you know
We
that? How do
know
you know
he
that?
hasn't.
How do you know that?
You don't know that.
You don't
actually
know
don't know
that.
that.
Okay,
You
so-
don't know that.
So to be clear, you would agree, wouldn't you, that something that Trump could do is ask him to come back, right?
Sure. Why not? He has the freedom of speech.
So do you have evidence? Do you have evidence that he's done that?
No, but you don't have evidence to
Okay.
the contrary.
So I would like to have evidence that he's done that, actually, right?
I would like evidence that he hasn't.
You
Yeah.
want evidence that he hasn't. What would it take for me to prove that he hasn't asked?
I don't know. Up to you.
So I'm going to ask: is what you're asking for me unprovable?
This is
is there
so
any
fucking
evidence?
lame, dude.
Wait, I just want to
It
be
is a
clear.
bit
So you just
unfalsifiable.
wait. So what you just heard, right? He just said you're going to have to prove that he didn't ask for him to come back. And I asked New York Shade, how would I actually do that? What would I need to show you to prove that he didn't ask? And so I'll ask you, New York Shade, since that's what you said. What evidence could I present to you to demonstrate that he didn't ask?
That he didn't ask?
Yes, and that's because that's what you said that you would need.
Correct.
So what would it take for me to show you that he didn't ask?
Trump saying I didn't ask him.
Okay.
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 So
We gotta
he
get
could be
Prime
lying,
in
right?
here.
Wait. Why would that prove it? He could be lying.
Okay, anybody could be lying about anything.
Okay, so then why don't you stop being a fucking dickhead and actually acknowledge that the person that's going to need to produce the evidence of trying to facilitate, and really, you didn't really ask whether or not he did. You're just asking what could it, and really, I just gave you an answer. He could ask for him back, and you agreed he could do that.
Pisco, I don't even agree with the Supreme Court ruling. I don't know what you're trying to.
Oh, you don't agree with the Supreme Court ruling?
No, I think he should stay in El Salvador. He's been deported and he's going to stay there.
But wait, do you agree it was illegal to remove him, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
what they should have done is reverse the hold order on him and then deported him. I agree with that.
So it's withholding, just to be clear. But so if they deported, for example, if they deported you or one of your family members,
citizen. They would never do that.
Wait. No, if they did. So the question is, if they did, so you agree Trump said that he wants to do that, right?
For the worst criminals, yeah.
But do you agree that he said that he would deport U.S. citizens to Sakat? He did say that, right?
He pondered it.
He said that he wanted to do it, right?
He specifically
let's give it to
said,
Prime.
I'm going to get rid of homegrowns. And he said it multiple times. Homegrowns. Like, I get rid of homegrowns.
Are you under the impression that they're just going to take random fucking U.S. citizens and send them to Supermax prison?
No. What I'm under the impression is... Wait a minute, hold on. Wait. What I'm under the impression is that he is going to take individuals, right? He's going to replicate what he's just done here. He's going to take individuals and send them away. Now, are those individuals random? I don't know, right? Are they specifically the people are they specifically people who've done something awful? I don't know. Do they specifically deserve to be sent out? I don't know, because there'll be no due process. If there's no due process,
you're making that up. You're making that up.
We're doing it right now. What are you talking about?
So here's the example.
No, they're not doing that right now.
They're not doing it. Obama did it to 700 people. Obama did it to 700 people.
I don't know who you're referring to. Sorry, I don't know who you're referring to.
I want to give. Hold on. I want to give Prime a chance to finish. Hold on. I know everyone wants in this. I want to give Prime a chance to finish. He has a mic. Finish, Prime. Please.
If you, I don't know. I just got started, man. Like,
no, I'm just giving you the mic, man. Go ahead.
Okay. But Shade, you can inform me as to what you're referring to, because I'm just not sure, but I'd love to hear it. But the thing that I was going to say, you were asking how to get them back. Well, we are paying El Salvador to take these prisoners. We're paying them. I believe the number is 6 million. This was confirmed by the vice warden of the jail, like literally just yesterday, I believe. Yeah, they're being paid to accept these prisoners. It's a contract work. And so Donald Trump could either demand of his contractor that he fulfills his duty to return the prisoner, or he could say, well, we're not paying you anymore. This incredibly expensive Supermax prison, or whatever you would call it, CCOT, right? Is extremely expensive. It's extremely expensive. Yeah. For the small economy of El Salvador, it absolutely is. But in any case, right?
For the US.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. For the case, it's a contractor, right? And he could simply request that. That's how you get him back. Let's not pretend that this is something impossible.
Wait, you guys agree he can get it back, right? You guys agree he can get it back, right? Both agreed?
Actually, I don't know that. The reason why is because he was deported under the INA and not the EAE, and the reason why that's important is because the contract
was not deported under the INA. He was not deported under the INA. That's wrong.
He was not deported under the Alien Enemies Act either.
He wasn't deported under either. This was a completely lawless deportation. Removal.
That's why Prime
said you should say
I will argue.
Yeah.
Well, no. Prime incited that U.S. citizens are being deported, which is absolute bullshit.
No. I didn't say now. No, I didn't say now.
I said in the future. He's saying it.
So I could go out and murder 10 people tomorrow, but I'm not going to.
But Trump, the president of the United States, is saying that he wants to do it.
I agree with him. As long as they are tried in the U.S., I do not care where they're incarcerated.
So let's be clear. You agree that some U.S. citizens should be deported to Sakat?
Violent felons? I don't care where they're in prison.
So is the answer yes? You agree that some U.S. citizens should be deported to Sakat? Is the answer yes to that?
With some nuance, if they are tried in the U.S. and have deemed to be violent criminals, I do not care where they're incarcerated.
Well, the answer is yes.
So the answer is yes, right?
With some nuance, yes.
So you think that there should be exile for U.S. citizens to Sakat?
Fair? under certain conditions, you would agree with Trump taking
Yes.
U.S. citizens and putting them in
Okay.
CCOT.
So,
Okay.
so then the question becomes, if they grabbed you, right? If they grabbed you and they put you on a plane and they put you into CCOT, do you think that the Supreme Court has the jurisdiction to hear the case and order the Trump administration to facilitate your return? Do they have the jurisdiction?
Wait, you just argued that they do have jurisdiction.
No, I agree that they would have
He's-
jurisdiction.
he
to
asked
hear your
if
case.
you have,
but
if you
wait,
think that is what he's asking.
Do you think the Supreme Court would have jurisdiction to hear the case to bring you back?
No.
So you think so? Just to be, everyone make sure how
Terrifying.
extreme these people are. How extreme these people are. What he's saying is what he thinks is the actual answer, and what he wants to bring about is that as long as a U.S. citizen is absconded to CCOT, and it's done, even if it's done illegally, that no court.
Yeah,
no,
no, that's not what he's saying.
Wait, no,
That
no,
is
no,
not
no,
what
no,
he's
no,
saying.
wait, wait,
While
no,
you, no, you stop, you
let me
ideological
finish.
idiot.
Let me finish. Let me
My
finish.
goodness.
So he just said the Supreme Court would not have jurisdiction to hear that case. That means if they get you, however they get you, if they get you to that prison, no court could order the facilitation of your return. That is what you're arguing. It's extreme.
That's not what I'm arguing.
You're taking it to the.
I do want to give him a
Pisco, you
chance
know it.
to respond.
Well, first of all,
on.
Pisco is sitting here filibustering.
I understand, but I'm trying to give
gaslighting and
New
saying
York-
all kinds of-
Let Jason take it.
Okay, Jason, you want to take it? Go ahead.
Okay, it's very simple. First of all, we don't know why he is in CCOT. Like I suggested, he was deported under the INA,
was not.
which means he was just. Shut up, Pisco. The reason why I say that is because he was not given the AEA treatment. He was put in CCOT. I don't know who ordered that. Now, if President Abueda or whatever the hell his name is made that order, that's him acting on an El Salvadorian citizen. That's
If
that's
Bukele
his
gave
national
an order,
sovereignty.
if Bukele gave an order to a U.S. DHS employee, do you think that Bukele could have ordered that?
No, not at all.
Okay, so then why?
'Cause
why
I
are you
actually,
saying
I
it-
actually. So hold on. So when he was deported to El Salvador, which I will tell you is illegal because they didn't rescind the withholding order.
Yeah.
However,
with that.
once he gets onto El Salvadorian soil, he is now under the jurisdiction of a sovereign nation, and that is why I would say the Supreme Court doesn't have any say what goes on over there.
including for U.S. citizens, including for U.S. citizens.
Yes, including for U.S. citizens,
Okay.
I believe in sovereignty.
So it's
now,
not
I don't
extreme,
agree.
right?
No,
so
it's,
when I say that you
you're
believe
taking
that,
it
that's
to
accurate,
the extreme,
right?
is what I'm saying. So when it comes to American citizens being housed over there for prison, no, I fully agree with that. Disagree with that, and I would fight that to the bitter end because American citizens are held to a different standard when it comes to imprisonment and rights and things like that. You would agree that illegal aliens do have a different level of due process. Would you agree with that?
So I don't necessarily.
Would you agree with that? You would not agree with that. So no, hold on. No. You do this shit to other people. I'm going to do it to you now. You fuck. Okay.
I'm answering
No,
your
you're
question.
not.
I'm
No,
answering
you're
your
going to
question.
obfuscate like you always do.
No. I'm answering your question. You asked me directly, do U.S. citizens and non-citizens have different procedural due process rights? And the answer is it depends on what the deprivation is. Because in some cases, non-citizens don't have any right and therefore don't have any due process with respect to a right. And so you could argue the U.S. citizens has more due process in that context.
What is the bare minimum of due process required over
The Supreme Court
an
tells us
illegal
it's
alien?
different. Yeah. So the Supreme Court tells us that due process is a concept that is malleable to the different deprivations. So, for example, your due process rights with respect to criminal actions are going to be really, really high. The maximum amount of due process. You're going to have like full jury trials. You're going to have a lot of opportunity to be heard and stuff. It's less for immigration and deportation matters. That is true. But even less than deportation, right? Or like if you get denied Social Security benefits, right? You have access to some due process rights there, but they're more limited. So it's not this fixed concept. And the way that you are trying to put it in the one box is amateurish, and it shows that you're ignorant about the concept of due process.
I'm not a law professional.
It shows.
Yeah. But the fact that you sit here as an actual bar associate member of New York State, sit there and completely gaslight and lie about even the SCOTUS
He's
ruling.
not doxing you
claiming
there, is he?
Wait, no, he's not. But there's
Okay,
no lie
just
here.
making sure.
No,
What
there is
the
a lie. The lie was that you claimed that the Supreme Court requires that he returns. Okay.
No, I didn't say that.
You are
I
a
was
liar.
careful.
You're an
No,
unethical fucking shit lawyer.
I didn't say that. No.
Okay.
No, you said it like 3
What I
times
said.
this
No,
show.
I was very clear. I'm careful of my language. You may not be, but I am.
You were not careful with your language.
What the Supreme?
Jesus,
I
Stone.
said you guys soyed the fuck out because I asked you not whether or not the Supreme Court ordered that he be brought back. I asked you should he be brought back. independent of what the court can order. And in fact, I clarified that. I said I'm not saying whether the court can or did order his unequivocal return. I said, should he be brought back? Now, New York, whatever the fuck that dumbass's name is, he said no, he shouldn't be brought back, even though it was an illegal order, right? Even though it was an illegal deportation, even though this is completely lawless.
Yeah,
he said
I'll admit where the wrongs are.
Yeah, so you also agree that it was illegal. Should he be brought back?
I think that we don't have the jurisdiction.
Let me ask this. I think we're circling the drain a little bit. Hold on.
Answer the question.
I did answer the question.
Yeah, we are circling the drain a little bit, and
Just
I do
have. You don't like it doesn't mean it's not.
I do have a question for Pisco and Prime, because something got brought up earlier and we never really got to explore it, and I'm very curious. So, say we do have proof that Trump asked Bukele, "Hey, Bukele, we need him back. Can you give us back?" And then Bukele says, "No." Would Trump have fulfilled his duty to facilitate the release, or
no?
Can the court require him to do more than that? Is the question.
No, they can require to do up to the impermissible line of invading on Article 2 prerogatives, and that line, I agree, has not been clearly delineated about the full extent of Article 2. Let me give you some clear cases and what I consider to be unclear cases. I think a clear case in favor of the president would be if you came back to the district court and the district court said, okay, he said no, well, you have to order SEAL Team 6 strike and to go and pick him up and actually abscond with him with using force, or to order an invasion. I think that would be well beyond the district court's authority to do. I'm a reasonable person. I respect the separation of powers. But something I think that isn't, beyond the pale would be for the court to order all payments to cease to Bukele. I think that would be well within its powers. Some people might disagree with me on that, and ultimately that will be, up to the courts to determine. I anticipate that that will see some litigation up to the Supreme Court. But what is clear, though, is doing nothing is not acceptable. And regardless of what the limits on the Supreme Court or of the specifics of the district court, you should want, if you believe in the rule of law, right? If you believe the law should be followed, you should ask Trump to bring him back to comply with the law, regardless of whether the court can order that, right? Because what Jason said was actually not responsive. He said, I don't know if the court has the jurisdiction. Well, the court disagrees with you, and the court is the one who says what the law is. But put that aside. Even if it were true that the court didn't have...
You're actually wrong there.
The Supreme Court said, this, in ruling on the case...
why here in a moment.
Wait, hang on. So I'll just tell you, and then you can respond to it. The Supreme Court ruled on this case. Ipso facto, the Supreme Court has jurisdiction.
So the Supreme Court said that you also have to, in their instructions to District Judge Paula Sinis, is that that she needs to make sure to ensure deference to the Second Amendment, Article 2 powers and everything.
Basically, that's not a jurisdictional question. That's not a jurisdictional question.
Hold on.
Do let him answer.
Let me finish.
Aircraft Sparky some space. Yeah.
So basically what they are saying is, look, there is definite limits. We have not told you where that limit is, but it is quite interesting that from the original order from Judge Sinis, it went from facilitate and effectuate to strictly facilitate. And it was in that order that it needed to be defined. Everything needed to be defined. She still has failed to do that. She is not actually following Supreme Court orders.
That's not true for a lot of reasons, and I can explain each one of those. What you're saying is wrong, and everything about what you said is wrong. But just to be clear, that is not a jurisdictional issue. What you're talking about here is the remedy, that the remedy can't exceed beyond a certain article.
I actually think that there is no remedy that our
okay. The Supreme Court disagrees with you.
Can do.
So you think the Supreme Court?
The only thing that they can do is for
nothing.
Domestic obstacles. They can say facilitate. So Pam Bondi said the other day, no, they didn't say anything. It has not been defined yet. Don't pretend that it has.
Can it mean do nothing? Do you think the Supreme Court could have ordered
them? No, I'm not saying do nothing.
Yeah, okay.
What they said is they have to facilitate. What does facilitate entail? Where they asked for Judge Sinis to actually expand on that. She still has not done that. That was an order from the Supreme Court that she is to expand and let people know exactly what she's saying.
Wrong about that.
So she went to the Oxford Dictionary and she gave a generic, when she was using a term of art, which came from the INS. No, not INS.
You're just reading the briefing wrong and stupidly. I mean, you stop doing that.
Okay,
you're wrong about something. So
you're an ideological idiot that doesn't fucking understand
from the briefing.
What a fucking word means.
You're just reading from the briefing.
Release, you think means return.
So
Jesus.
to be 100% clear, you're reading from briefing. You don't understand it. The first thing we need to figure out is, did the Supreme Court rule on jurisdiction? The answer is yes. The Supreme Court has the jurisdiction. The fact that the Supreme Court is giving an order at all in this case related to Mr. Abrego Garcia shows that they have jurisdiction. You're not allowed to give orders when you lack subject matter jurisdiction. So it's a holding of the Supreme Court. They held 9-0. There is jurisdiction to hear the claims. And in fact, the district court said as much in earlier, the oral hearing that they had, that absolutely the arguments related to jurisdiction and venue have been defeated in the Supreme Court. Why do you know that? Because the Supreme Court ordered something, right? The fact that the Supreme Court ordered something means they decided they have jurisdiction. Do you agree with that?
Who was the order? Who was the order to?
The Supreme Court, upheld, right, the order of the district court, and in upholding the order of the district court.
So
it is
who was the
decided.
order
It is
to?
this. So the order is to executive branch officials that are listed as defendants, but the Supreme Court, in upholding the district court order, has decided the question of jurisdiction. They wouldn't uphold an order for a court that lacks subject matter jurisdiction. You agree with that, right?
Not fully. So the order was partially granted and partially vacated. So
But that's not a jurisdictional
Where's the
issue.
line? Hold
That's
on,
not
hold on.
jurisdiction.
Let Aircraft Sparky explain. You got to give him a chance. Go ahead. What do you mean?
When it comes to, and I could be wrong here, Pisco. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm a legal scholar. But at the end of the day, they were basically given instructions to both sides. They were given instructions to both the executive and to the Article 3 judge. And basically, the order says, you will define these terms. She still hasn't done it. She's pulled out an Oxford dictionary and pretends that's enough. The fourth Circuit actually came out today. Hold on. So basically, he said you need to give deference to the Article 2, the Article 2 branch. Which, by the way, what can the judiciary
You're not answering
do?
the question. You're filibustering. I'm willing to address everything you just said, and I'll do it in 30 seconds.
What can the judiciary do with international diplomacy?
You need to answer the jurisdictional question. You need to answer the jurisdictional question. The fact that there's an order at all, the fact that they're issuing holdings about discovery, the fact that the Fourth Circuit is not disturbing the discovery orders by the district court, doesn't that show you that the Supreme Court has held that there is jurisdiction for Article 3 courts to hear these claims? Yes or no?
I actually think that Article 3 courts can hear it, but not at the district level. It has to be at the appellate level. But
then why would the Supreme Court not say that? The Supreme Court sent it back to the district court.
The Supreme Court was giving enough rope for Judge C needs to hang herself.
Oh no, that is absurd. The district court, of
course,
has
jurisdiction.
Wait, yes, it is absurd. The district court, of course, has subject matter jurisdiction. If the Supreme Court thought that the district court did not have subject matter jurisdiction, they would dismiss the case for lack of jurisdiction. That would be the proper remedy. But they haven't done that because, of course, in ordering or in upholding the order, it's an implicit assumption of jurisdiction. You have to understand that.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying there. Okay, and maybe I misspoke. Okay, I'm not a legal scholar. The fact that they actually are responding, but I believe that what they are actually doing is settling an argument between the Article 3 judge and the Article 2 branch. Okay, that is what they're doing. So that is where the jurisdiction, that is where Supreme Court jurisdiction lies, not on foreign sovereign soil.
No, that's
where the difference is.
That's been decided. No, the foreign soils issue has been decided. The Supreme Court says, yes, you do have the power to issue orders that affect on foreign lands. Yes, you do. That's why they issued and upheld the order. If they didn't have subject matter jurisdiction to make determinations as to foreign soil or U.S. persons on foreign soil, then they would have dismissed it for lack of jurisdiction because you don't have jurisdiction to hear the case. They are
adjudicating a disagreement between the Article 3 and the Article 2. That is what they're doing with this order, and
that's
that is why.
Of course, they're doing that, but yes, but that's not responsive to what I'm saying.
But all the same time, the very first line of the actual decision, the application is granted in part and denied in part. Okay, so you want to say it's completely granted? No, it isn't. Okay, there's a reason why it's denied in part.
I didn't say it was completely granted. I said the court obviously has jurisdiction because in upholding
the
order,
I'm agreeing with you in the fact that they're settling an agreement between the two branches.
On to your next point. Your next point was that they ordered the district court to define both of these terms. They didn't. Yes. They said they did not say that. They said the district court needs to clarify what they mean only by the term effectuate.
You're right, and I misspoke there. Yeah, I'm wrong.
Okay,
there.
so
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking.
What the district court did was it struck out the term effectuate and said, "We'll just deal with facilitate."
Why is that, Pisco? Why is
There
that?
could be numerous reasons why they did that. Number one, they could do it because they want to avoid any additional time that Mr. Abrego Garcia, by having repeat appellate litigation and having to litigate what the term effectuate means, she might be wanting to simplify it because every day that Abrego Garcia is not brought back is an irreparable injury. So it could be that. It could be the fact that she was using the term. It could be the fact that she was using the term synonymously. If you actually read the briefing up to the Supreme Court, it wasn't until the reply brief on the Supreme Court emergency briefing that the government first raised this like sort of distinction between effectuate and facilitate. And up until that order, all the courts were kind of treating them synonymously. So option 2 for why she struck out that order is maybe she was using the term synonymously. On option 3 is maybe she thought that the Supreme Court was indicating that she went beyond what she was doing by saying effectuate. All 3 of those are possibilities. You don't know the answer to it. And what we're left with is the clear order from the Supreme Court, which is upholding facilitate and facilitating specifically the release from custody in El Salvador. And so you can't just say that, well, facilitate could mean nothing, just wait around.
No, and I'm not arguing that. Yeah. So I'm not even arguing that. So I think that what the Trump administration
just real quick, I do want to get more people in on this, but
yes, I understand. But I believe it's
Yeah.
actually I believe that facilitation has already been accomplished, and that was done so inadvertently during that press briefing with the El Salvador.
Okay, so just to be clear, Aircraft Sparky, you think that the exchange between Trump and Bukele, when they talked about releasing, and the reporter as well, talking about releasing Garcia, you think that exchange fulfills the requirement
I do believe that fulfills the requirement.
That's outrageous. That's outrageous. Everyone was saying he doesn't have the power. You can't ask this of him. You have to ask the other president. And the president was saying, I don't have the power. What can I do? I have to smuggle them? That is an absurd statement for you to say that that constitutes facilitation. He's saying that he can't do anything. You can't
well,
ask him
I do want to know if the other people think that as well. Prime, do you think that counts?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, that's fine.
The question is, the question is, does the go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, the question is that during the televised exchange between Bukele, Trump, and the reporter who was asking the question.
Oh, was that enough?
Does that count as facility? So fuck no.
Stupid.
Okay, got you.
No, he said no. What even? Let's remember what happened, right? He like they get a question from a reporter, right? And then he says like, "Oh, why don't you direct that towards this guy, right? The Bukele instead, right? Not even asking him, hey, would you return? We didn't actually hear that, right? He just directed the question. Would you like So like the reporter is the one who has the power to ask and get, and like if he refuses a reporter, that means then it's been refused. Like what the fuck?
It's the stupidest argument of all time. I can't believe you would say that.
All right, let me ask you.
I do want to give it to New York Shade. Go ahead.
If in your world, if Trump asked Bukele and Bukele then, as he obviously would, said no, would that satisfy the requirement for you?
No, I said that already.
What would satisfy your mind?
Yeah, good. So there could be other measures that you could take up to the Article 2 limit. It's not going to be specifically defined right at this moment because we haven't had briefing, and I'm not going to overstep and say that I know every possible thing that they could do before I read the briefing. That is going to
the answer is cancel the contracts.
But you could cancel the contracts. You could cancel contracts.
Is he being held under the contract?
Yes,
it's
where's your proof? Where's your proof in that?
They said it. They stated it. They're paying. Those things are being made.
Cool. Link that to me, please. I'd love to read that because
I'll find it for you.
Something I missed. Could be something that I missed. If he's being held under contract, you're absolutely right. I would agree that yes, they can cancel.
Do you think that they were just holding him out of the goodness of their hearts?
As far look, President Bukele could have just as soon as he hit sovereign El Salvadorian soil said you're going there because he's a dictator. That's what he does.
Go ahead, Prime.
Experts,
go ahead, Prime.
$6 million payment to Salvadoran prison likely violates U.S. human rights law. So, like the first thing that came up, and talking about the money that went to CCOT, but I'll put this in your.
But that doesn't answer the question.
Marco Rubio said that they made a deal and that they're paying money.
No.
For this, and
look, I'm not denying the deal. I'm not denying the deal, but from what I understand, the deal as far as what I understood is for 300 people of Venezuelan origin because Venezuela will not take their citizens back.
That's clearly wrong, right? Because they're putting El Salvadorian people in there.
Yeah,
right?
they just put El Salvadorian.
Like I said, I don't know if
that's fair.
They're making expansions, right? They're talking about U.S. citizens, so that it's not just that scope, right? What you just said, and even if it were just that scope. That shows that there's an agreement. There's at least some agreement for some people giving some money to the government. They're subcontracting the immigration detention authorities. And why, right? We have prisons in the United States. The only reason we have prisons here, right? They're doing that so they avoid law, right? The only reason you would go to this gulag in El Salvador is to avoid the law, right? It's not like they're deporting them into the country and, in El Salvador, Bukele is holding them under some allegation of criminal activity from El Salvador. They're not doing that. Right, that would be one thing. Deport them to the actual country. Let's let them go free. But they're not doing that. They're detaining them under the orders of the United States.
I want to hold on. I want to get the mic.
This doesn't say what you claim it does, Prime. You made the claim. You made the affirmative claim. Being held under contract. That's what I'm looking for.
I want to give
$6 million to house hundreds of immigrants supported from the United States.
No,
it's in the first.
No, it does not say that Abrego Garcia.
Do I have to look this up? Okay.
Hold on, my guy. No, seriously, like.
Dude,
are we doing this? $6 million. Hold on. I will read the first paragraph. The U.S. State Department is paying El Salvador $6 million to house hundreds of immigrants deported from the United States in an immense and brutal prison, CCOT, right? Right there.
That's a contract.
That's it. It doesn't say contract, but that's a contract.
But that's a contract.
Hold on. So that is not what I'm even talking about. I'm not denying that there's a contract between El Salvador and the United States. No, I'm saying we don't know if Abrego Garcia is being held under that contract.
What else would he be held under?
He could be held under as an El Salvadorian citizen for being a member of MS-13. El Salvadorian president Bukele could just go put him in.
You don't believe this?
Is there a dictator?
This is bad.
He's a dictator. That's what he does.
Zero tolerance for MS-13 affiliation. He jails literally everybody.
So to be clear, and think about what it would take, even if you do believe this, right? If you believe this, what you're saying is that for Abrego Garcia, there's a special subcase, right? Yes, they're absolutely this contract agreement stuff exists, but it only applies into the convenient scope that excludes people like Abrego Garcia. To believe this, though, you have to believe and accept.
There's no evidence,
and you have to believe and accept as they do that. That we're doing this kind of negotiation with a brutal dictator who just locks up anyone without any due process whatsoever. And that is what you're suggesting, and that these people are going to be doomed to languish for the rest of their lives, potentially, in this prison.
And actually, the contract is
El Salvador
for 1 year. And the contract is only to hold them for 1 year, by the way.
Well, this is what if I may.
That's better evidence for us to show that it's a contingent contract.
Sure.
That needs to be renewed.
I don't know that Abrego Garcia is being held under
Wouldn't it be nice to have a trial and figure that out?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, I have a question for New York Shade, and I want to get him back in on there. He said something earlier, and I want to give him a chance to elucidate because I just don't know why he said this, and I want to give him a chance to explain that you said that you were not okay, and that regardless of the legality of it, that and you can correct me if I'm misstating, by the way, that you don't think Garcia should be brought back to the United States. Is that
no? That's not what I said.
Okay, can you elaborate, please? Correct me.
They should try to facilitate his return, and they can't.
Wait, so should they try to bring him back?
They should try to facilitate it.
Wait, but I'm asking you. So, should they try to bring him back?
They should try to facilitate it.
Yeah,
well, okay. What do you mean by that? No, what do you mean by facilitate? Like, I just really curious.
I think if Bukele decides to free an El Salvadorian citizen from the prison, then Trump can go ahead and fly a plane over to El Salvador and bring him back. Yes.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, should they at least try?
They have. Bukele said he's not doing it.
That's not what I asked. Should they?
Should who?
Should the Trump administration try to bring him back?
Try by doing what?
Whatever means is acceptable. Should they try?
They can't try because there's nothing to facilitate.
So should they try or should they not try? If there's nothing to try, then your answer is no, right? They shouldn't try.
They should try if he's released from prison.
So why should they not try to facilitate his removal from the detention itself, which is what the order says? It says facilitate
to make it easier, because you can't make something easier if it's not happening.
But that's what the court says. So the court says, right? The court says to help facilitate
his release from custody.
Release from custody, right? Release from custody. They should facilitate that.
How does a U.S. administration release a El Salvadorian citizen in a sovereign nation?
We're going around this like we've done this before. So Shade, I actually had another question for you because you brought something up, and I don't know, and maybe you can educate me. Right? You said Obama did something to 700 individuals. Could you tell us what that was?
Yeah, I actually just shared the NPR article in the group.
Yeah,
under Barack Obama, 4 U.S. citizens were accidentally deported to another nation under false pretense. And up to 700 were detained by ICE under Obama. And my argument from the very beginning, and I know Pisco has a really tough time actually listening, is that this is complete just outrage that is manufactured because there's a historic precedent that this happens whenever there are large-scale deportations, irrespective of there being a Republican or a Democratic administration. Of course,
you cultist. You sound like a cultist, dude. You
Hold
don't
on.
realize how
Before I have a question before he goes.
Before, come on. I want to interact with this, please.
Yeah.
Sure. Good. So you're saying that, and I was trying to read the article. It's a long one, but it was talking about how, and this is from 2016, how U.S. citizens often get swept up in ICE raids, right? And then they have to prove that they are U.S. citizens while in detention, and how very difficult it is, right? And I didn't get to that part you're referring to, but I'm sure it's there, right? That 4 individuals were sent out. Okay, right? See, I had never been aware of that. Thank you for educating me on this. But those 4 individuals, would you say, right, if they were U.S. citizens, that they should have been returned? That Obama, making that mistake, right, and it falls on him, that he should have made sure that that wrong has been righted.
Of course.
Okay.
Why doesn't it apply right now?
Because he's not a U.S. citizen.
Okay, but why would you have a problem with them deporting U.S. citizens? Presumably because it's against the law, right?
Correct.
Okay, so if it's against the law to deport U.S. citizens, well, I just want to be clear. Before you said that you were in favor of deporting U.S. citizens. You realize you said that, right?
I think if
you realize that you just made you realize you just
no. Let's hold on,
Yeah,
Pisco, please go,
Relax,
please. I love you, Pisco. But you gotta give him a chance to answer your question. Give New York Shade answer the question. Go ahead.
I would be open to the idea if an American citizen is tried in a U.S. court for, let's say, a triple homicide and is sentenced to life in prison. I would be open to the idea that he is imprisoned overseas rather than a supermax facility here. I'm open to it.
That sounds more equivocal. Before you said unambiguously, yes, I'm in favor of it in certain circumstances.
That's not what I said. That is not what I said.
I
literally
the
nuance.
That is absurd. That is absolutely absurd on its face. You should never deport an American citizen because they did something bad. Okay, that is just look. There's at least 3 of us on this panel that swore an oath to a document. Okay, myself, Wick, and Pisco. Okay, look. I think that the Supreme Court actually came out and they said, look, this deportation was illegal. Why was it illegal? It's illegal because they disregarded the withholding order. That is the only reason. His deportation otherwise was just...
that is not the only reason. That is not the only reason. There's multiple reasons.
Hold on. Did he have a deportation order?
So not one that was validly executable to El Salvador. They did not have that.
I agree. I agree there.
Okay.
Any other country in the world, they could have deported him to, though, correct?
Yes, but they were required to give him due process rights both under the INA and under the Constitution. So it's different. So one is they're violating the INA by deporting him someplace where the withholding decision says you can't. So that's one. 2, it's violating the INA because they're not going through the right procedures that are statutory. 2. And 3, they're violating the the 5th Amendment due process clause against the federal government. They're violating the Constitution by also not giving them those due process rights, which was upheld in the Alien Enemies Act case, which says that even illegal immigrants have procedural due process rights. And so there are at least 3 sources of law that made this deportation illegal, not just the withholding order.
Okay. What was the other 2? Because honestly, I don't know, and I'm curious about that because I want to be.
So one are the procedures under the INA, right? The INA require you, if you're going to execute or to try to get rid of a withholding removal or to effectuate a removal, you need to give people certain rights. They're more minimal than in other contexts. They can be very summary, right? It's not that you get a big, huge jury trial in the United States.
No, it can be like a 5-minute thing. Just verify these things and move on.
Yes. Yeah. So we're not even talking about here these amazing opportunities. These are like minimal opportunities.
Okay.
So there's the INA provides some basic procedural rights for these people, but also the Constitution. The Constitution provides procedural due process rights, yes, even for illegal immigrants, as was held in the Alien Enemies Act case, which Trump actually won.
So hold on. Can I ask New York Shade some more questions, right? So I'll let my man Pisco be bad cop, right? I'll be good cop here.
Sorry.
I'm Shade, right? So I'm trying to do this, extremely respectfully, right? Shade, you are, and to be clear, right? You are saying that it's fine that a person can be, grabbed by ICE, right? Detained by ICE, and then sent out of the country without an intermediary court case or legal proceeding. Is
That's
that
not what
correct?
I
I
said
want to
at
make
all.
sure.
No.
I want to understand. Okay, now let me know. What do you feel?
They should be owed due process, which is why I think they should have fought the withholding order before deporting him. I've admitted and conceded
Okay.
that should have happened.
Okay, all right. Well, there were other cases too where there was no legal proceeding either. Like for the other people who were sent out, they also didn't get a legal proceedings. They were just like grabbed and left the country. But in any case,
Well,
right?
what's your definition of due process here? Because in my view, if you
It
ID
would be
somebody and then
yeah.
match that to our internal databases of citizenship, and you find that he's not a citizenship, that is enough due process for me.
No, you need notice, an opportunity
that's-
to be heard, and a neutral arbiter. Those are
Habeas
basic elements of due
at the
process.
very minimum,
Yeah,
you got to
yeah.
have
Okay,
habeas.
sure. Okay, sure.
An opportunity to be
Okay.
heard, right? So, because and think about it, he could be an
sure.
MS-13 member. I'm not saying that definitively he isn't. I think the evidence is very weak, but he could be, right? But you have a right to cross-examine witnesses, right? Like imagine that someone just said, "Oh, on the basis of this anonymous tip guy who got a bunch of facts wrong, we're just going to deport you, or we're going to, throw you in jail."
Yeah. So hold on.
I know.
You're-
Prime,
you're
let's
wrong.
give it Prime. Let's give it Prime.
You're the entire thing.
Let me finish being good guy. All right. So Shade. Thank you. Okay. Right. So you agree. So what you said, right? So putting aside what was just said, right? What you said is that you want a situation where who actually does the checking, right? Is it ICE? Does ICE go into the database, right? In the system that you were thinking of?
No, it'd be the
Does
immigration
ICE
court.
the immigration court? Okay.
Yeah.
So we do have them in front of a neutral party, right? And the neutral party, and you're saying what they're supposed to do is simply look into whether he is within some sort of citizen database, right? Maybe Social Security.
They
or
have
whatever,
to prove
right?
that he's an illegal citizen. Yes.
They have to prove that he's a legal citizen. Okay, love
Or
news,
sorry,
right?
not a citizen.
Not a citizen. Right?
What is
So
the
like,
standard
a
of
person-
proof? That's the next question. That's the next obvious question. What is the standard of proof?
So usually it's pretty low. It's like
Yeah,
more likely than
yeah.
not, right? So this is we're not talking about something extreme here, guys.
preponderance
We're
of
not talking about
evidence,
beyond
I
a reasonable
believe.
doubt.
I know.
Yeah.
We
agree on this.
Here's my thing. So like the database of citizens that doesn't exist, man. Hate
Right.
to
It's
break this to you.
SSNs,
That's not a thing.
driver license registries. I
Well,
understand.
yeah.
Well, what about people who are born in homes that may not have birth certificates, things like that?
100%.
There are so many different deals. So the idea that there's a database that has every American citizen is ridiculous on its face. There is. Well, dude, I did some studying for this, Pisco. I'm trying my
I
best
didn't
to
say
actually
anything.
be.
That was them.
Oh,
That was
yeah,
Shade. Shade was casting Shade.
but no, there's.
I'm just making a clarification.
We're limited. We're limited by deals now. When it comes to these immigration deals, a lot of it is just basically habeas. You get brought before a court, and it's like, "Hey, are you a citizen? Yes or no?" If you say yes, do you have proof? Now, it's hard to prove a negative, but obviously you say, "Well, if I have a birth certificate, blah blah blah." Okay, well they'll allow for someone to go to your place of residence, pick that thing up, things like that to prove that. This doesn't happen. It's not a huge trial for everything, Prime and Wick, because I know Wick's been very heavy on due process on Twitter. I'm just bringing you in on this because of your Twitter stuff. But at the end of the day, the amount of due process, like Pisco says, can actually be quite limited. And I believe that all of Brego Garcia's due process was pretty much done, with the exception of they didn't vacate.
So
They didn't vacate.
just to be
He
clear,
had two
just to be clear,
deportation orders. 4 judges affirmed it.
No, that's wrong. Everything you're saying is wrong. Everything you're saying is wrong.
What's wrong
he
about
didn't have. Yeah, he didn't have.
And IJ gave a deportation order. He appealed it to a 3-judge panel, and all 3 judges concurred.
No, you're wrong. So you're confusing right now. So don't say it so confidently when you're wrong. You're conflating an order that was on from the Board of Immigration Appeals under the executive branch. Right? This is all Department of Justice with respect to the EOIR. They appealed a bond order. That's what went up to the second level. That's not. They didn't appeal the final order of removability. Removability was conceded. Removability was conceded. Right?
Oh, yeah,
this guy crossed the border in 2011 when he was a kid. Why did he cross the border in 2011? loving his kid because he's a fucking horrible person? No, because his mom and him were being attacked by the very gangs that you just threw him in the fucking prison with. So that's why he crossed the border, because he feared for his life. And the immigration judge, who was an executive branch officer under the Trump administration in 2019, said, we believe it's credible. We believe your life's in danger. He didn't apply for asylum within 1 year until he was barred from asylum. Otherwise, he would have been granted asylum. He had to meet an even higher bar. He had to show by an even higher clear and convincing evidence that he was going to be persecuted. His life was in danger. And the Trump administration immigration judge in 2019 said, yes, you've met this even higher than asylum burden because we found you credible. This would not happen if they thought he was an MS-13 member. It would not happen if it was so clear that the Trump administration thought that he was a prominent member of MS-13 in 2019.
Wait,
they wouldn't just release him out of the country. They wouldn't give him working permits. They knew about this shit.
Yeah, I want to give it Shade. You had a question? Go ahead.
Pisco, just high level here. If he was so in danger of MS-13 related violence in El Salvador, why was he arrested in the U.S. hanging out with MS-13 gangbangers?
So first of all, that's in 2019. He wasn't hanging out with them. He was in a fucking parking lot looking for work. Just because
he was literally hanging out with them. What are you talking about?
No, he wasn't.
He was in a parking lot, standing next to people, all of whom were looking
like a home.
work.
Yeah, like a Home Depot. You've seen it at a Home Depot, right? Like,
right,
you know,
wearing MS-13 symbols and a lot of cash with $1,200 on him, throwing marijuana under a car. Okay.
So hold on. He was wearing, I'm not sure if this is back then or this is when he got picked up today, right? But he was picked up wearing Chicago Bulls paraphernalia, right? He was wearing that was it. Like, is it that? Are you saying?
No. And he was wearing a hoodie. He was wearing a hoodie with the guy covering his eyes with cash, which is another symbol of the MS-13 gang.
There are so many. I have seen. So okay, I live in an urban environment.
Bro, it's literally in the police report.
I live. Oh yeah, I know. The police might have said that, but I live in an urban environment, and I see things like that all the time. Right? That doesn't imply gang affiliation. And then this comes as a pattern, right? A pattern we've seen for the removal, where it's just like tattoos said by ICE to be gang affiliations, right? One guy had crowns on his arms, right? And it said mom and dad. And that was apparently gang affiliation. And so that's the proof. That is not gang affiliation. It's just anyone
didn't even have tattoos, right? But they're not even talking about his tattoos or anything, right? They're talking about the people in the parking lot where he was at when he was picked up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, but I'm expanding I'm expanding that to everyone else, right? Like the other people who got picked up as well. This is the proof that they're saying, oh, we had tattoos. They're like, they've told us like what they've been looking for. We shouldn't see pictures of the tattoos. And these are just random ass tattoos and tattoos you can see, right? People have done like reverse image searches on the tattoos. You can see those exact tattoos on many others, right? Like throughout the years, it was in Google image search. Like this is the level of evidence that's being presented here. So we're saying that
didn't two courts accept the evidence that implied that he was an MS-13 gang member?
So that's a bond stage hearing. It's a minimum threshold.
Didn't he get rejected a bond?
So he was rejected a bond. Yes, that's absolutely true. He was rejected a bond. It's a minimum super low threshold for the bond hearing situation where the court has its hands tied in terms of its accepting this report. This report that's based on hearsay. This report that's like wrong about the basis of why they stopped them. They said it was an attempted.
It's a credible informant that provided accurate information in the past to that police force.
So what is the definition of hearsay? Go ahead.
It doesn't matter. It's credible information from an informant.
You said it's not hearsay, right? You said it was not hearsay, right? Did you say that?
That's not what I said. I never said that.
So you agree it is hearsay?
I didn't say that either.
Okay. So when I said it was hearsay, why'd you stop me?
Yeah, you.
I said it was credible evidence from
I said it's hearsay.
Yes. It is hearsay.
Okay, it is hearsay, right?
But that coupled with the other pieces of evidence pretty much points it into a pretty clear direction.
So by the way, there's two levels of hearsay. The report itself is hearsay. Hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. The reason why we call that hearsay is because there's no chance to cross-examine it, right? There's no chance for an actual. So this is a bond hearing where the standards of evidence, the standards of proofs are super, super low. It is not a bond hearing to determine as a matter of law or a matter of fact that this person is a member of MS-13, and they're basically their hands are tied. If you have a facially legitimate report, they kind of have to accept it. But it's a pure, anonymous statement.
It's like setting bail, right? It's like setting bail. You're not actually talking about innocence, right? In that level of court.
So the DHS thinks that he's MS-13. The local police that arrested him think he's MS-13.
The
informant thinks he's MS-13, but thank God Pisco thinks he isn't, guys.
There are court proceedings. There are court proceedings that aren't about like truth or innocence, right?
I understand that.
So then you guys keep saying, though, that, well, true courts accept it. And we're saying this is not the case, right? Like, simply it was stated during those courts, and that was enough to, like get the bond hearing or to approve whatever happened in that courtroom. But it wasn't actually about, whether that fact is true or not.
That's completely correct what Prime just said, and it's a super low threshold. But listen to what you just said, New York Shade, right? What you just said was DHS believed that he was a member of MS-13. You think that in 2019 they believed he was a member of MS-13?
I don't know. I would have to look it up.
What? You just said it.
They do now. They do now.
No. Before, in 2019, did they think it when they were arguing in bond?
Well, I was referring to now. I don't know. I would have to look it up.
Okay, so is it true? Is it true or not true that you're aware? Because you just said the police thought he was MS-13. There's no indication of that.
What do you mean? It's in the police report.
Yeah. That police report states what someone said, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't
say cop.
That. It doesn't, no, it says
in a confidential informant.
It's two levels of hearsay.
Information.
It's 2 levels here. By the way, that cop was fucking a prostitute. Was suspended the next week because he was leaking confidential information. No, it goes to credibility. Agreed? It goes to credibility.
Sure.
So
it doesn't.
Is credibility relevant? Yes or no?
Not in this case. No.
Wait. The credibility of the cop who writes the report is not relevant. Is that what you're saying?
For something he did after he wrote the report?
What you just said, it was weighed on his credibility. You just agreed that it weighed on his credibility.
Sure, but it doesn't erase the report or automatically indicate that it's non-viable.
Idiot right now, right? Of course,
wait.
The fact that he's fucking a prostitute, an inherent position of authority over someone, breaking the rules. What
about the credibility of Garcia?
No, stop. So you can distract all you want. It does go to his credibility, correct?
Sure.
And the credibility of the cop who wrote the fucking report is relevant, right?
Sure, but it doesn't mean that the report is inaccurate.
So you agree when I brought that up, it was relevant, contrary to what you said before, which was irrelevant.
Because you can't prove that the report is incorrect.
Wait. The question is relevance, right? The question is relevance. You said it was irrelevant for me to bring up that issue that he was suspended from the cops. The cops were unwilling to have further discussions with
I think it's irrelevant because it doesn't disprove the credibility of the actual report.
Wait, so relevant is only things that 100% conclusively disprove something. That's your definition of relevance. It has to 100% conclusively disprove something. That's what relevant means.
If you want to play these little word games because you think you come out with a win, sure. Okay, maybe it's a little bit relevant, but it does not disprove the police report.
I do. Hold on, just Pisco, because I do have a couple of questions for your side on this. Because, let's just ask: does not the fact that in, I believe, 2022. He was pulled over in a traffic stop, right? And they suspected him of human trafficking, driving 7 illegals through Tennessee, no valid driver's license, and one of those people at least was on the FBI terrorist watch list. Does that not at least indicate that perhaps there is some validity to the accusations of him being a gangbanger? Right?
So no,
why not?
It doesn't indicate that at all, because the definition of human trafficking, it has to do with the peculiarity of how they define human trafficking under the regs. But there was no formal accusation of human trafficking with respect to Alberto Garcia. If there was some kind of proceeding, right, some kind of indictment, some kind of actual thing what we're talking about here is a situation where there was no indictment, where there was no initiation of formal proceedings, where there was right. So like, imagine if I was holding against you some non-allegation. Right, the fact that he was, pulled over based on an overly broad definition of human trafficking that would include, like, I guess, anytime you have individuals without IDs in a car, that equals quote unquote human trafficking under the relevant regulations. No, I don't think it has any tendency to prove or disprove.
Sure.
Or to prove
we are talking about the preponderance of evidence here, so that combined with the fact that he has a domestic violence order against him, combined with the fact that when he was
both of those are irrelevant.
Then. Combined with the fact that he was detained
both of those are
in
irrelevant.
2019. Let me finish.
Yeah, they're irrelevant.
Hold on, just real quick. Hold on. Let me finish my line of questioning here. 2019, he was detained with at least 2 other gang members who happened to be around him, as well as quite a bit of cash, and there was marijuana in the area. The police report isn't clear if it was on his person.
So I would say,
so when it
being
comes to
picked up-
preponderance, if I may finish, when it comes to the preponderance of evidence with all these things lined up, is it not at least possible?
No.
Or no?
Well, it's possible.
No.
Anything's possible,
Or,
but it's
or
not.
at least
it doesn't
perhaps
reach
more
any-
likely than not.
Yeah, not more likely than not. Certainly not, right? Like, because what did they have against him, right? First of all, I'm looking it up, right? And so like what he was accused of, being part of MS-13 is being the rank of Chiquillo, right? I don't know how to pronounce that. But Chiquillo, even if that's true, Chiquillo is not a rank, but instead used to refer to recruits who are yet to be initiated, right? So that's not even, even the form is not saying he's in the gang, right? Like, that's not even the case. And then what else do you have? You're saying that, okay, he was walking around in a place that has gangs. Lots of people live in places, especially if you live in an urban environment, that has gangs, right? Then the police showed up. They like round people up, right? Because they don't know what's going on, right? Let's say something violent is happening. They don't know what's going on. And they just like round people up to like get to stop. And then what he happens to have on him is money. Not illegal to have money, right? And happens to have weed. Now that might be illegal, but that doesn't tell you you're in a gang. A lot of people here have smoked weed and they're not in fucking gangs, right? So none of that adds up to gang membership.
Yeah, it's not even close.
I
Not
actually
even close.
think the gang membership is irrelevant.
It's not even close.
Oh, now it's irrelevant. Okay, great.
No.
I agree, but by the way,
I
agree
haven't
that
been
it's
arguing
irrelevant.
about I haven't been
totally
arguing
agree it's
for the gang
irrelevant, yeah.
membership stuff.
Okay.
Because
I
I
just
don't
wanna
think
be
he
clear.
was. I don't believe he was deported for that. If they wanted to do that, they would have went. And
So
they
the Trump
would have gotten
administration
the
is
withholding
lying,
order
right?
removed.
Wait, so the Trump administration is lying when they say that he was removed because he was
Yeah,
an MS-13
I'm not.
Okay,
gonna
he
say
may
that.
not have been. Hold on, just real quick.
Whoa. Hold up! I want to get a
You do
fucking
this
admission.
all the time.
You just said that. You just said.
No, I'm not going-
You just said you don't think he was deported because of that. I'm asking you. Therefore, is the Trump administration lying when they say that is the basis of why he's being removed?
No.
Are they lying?
No.
So make that make sense. Actually,
Okay, so define a lie. Go for it.
a conscious, deliberate falsehood.
A conscious, deliberate falsehood. Do you believe that Trump knows that he is not a gang member?
Wait, no. I'm not
No,
saying
no,
that
no,
it has
no.
to do.
No.
I'm not saying.
Don't run away from it.
I don't know if Trump knows. He's a fucking degenerate old man. I don't know if he knows the specific facts. The DHS people, the lawyers arguing the case, they certainly know. Fair?
Do you think that they believe that he's a gang member?
I believe they don't. That's what you just said, right? You said that.
No, I don't believe.
You said that, right? Wait.
And
You
I don't
said that.
think he was
So I'm
deported
asking you.
under that
So I'm asking you.
He
Wait.
wasn't deported under the AEA.
So you
They
said
didn't
he wasn't.
utilize that.
So you said they weren't doing it because of that, but they're saying they are. So I'm asking you, whoever's saying in the administration that's saying that, and they are saying that, are they lying?
If they believe that he is a gang member, they're not lying.
No, it's about the lie about the reason
Okay,
behind their
let
deportation.
me-
You're saying- Wait,
let-
I want to finish this. Wait,
Finish,
I want to
please,
know.
quickly.
I want to know if it's the case that you think that that's not the basis of why he's being removed, but they're saying it's the reason why he's being removed. Surely you would accept that someone in the administration is lying.
No, I would just say that they have different reasons, and we don't actually know why he was released because the government has released that information because it could be state secret. We don't know.
I tried.
Could be. Okay. Regardless of whether or not he was deported for being a gang member, one of the administration's strategies to justify this to the American people, to sell it to the American people, has been members of the administration, including Vice President J.D. Vance, going to social media, going on these podcasts, going on the news, and saying that this guy is a bad dude, he's a bad hombre, he's an MS-13 gangbanger, and he should not be brought back to this country. I do want to ask, and maybe this is related to the question at hand, but it does broaden the scope a bit from Garcia to the deportations in general. And I do want to kind of touch on this because J.D. Vance, in his screeds on social media, has said this, that if Biden brought in 20 million illegal immigrants, should not we do so? Isn't that a state of emergency which justifies maybe the lessening of due process to get rid of these illegal immigrants who have been brought in under the Biden administration? Is there a situation where we would say,
Clearly
hey,
Lawlessness should not lead to more lawlessness. So
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
So
I want
think
Prime.
to ask another question to maybe try to expand this, right?
Go ahead.
Like
Can I answer the
in terms,
question
and I'm
first?
asking to my conservatives. Sorry, to the conservative individuals here, right? Yeah. I'm curious. If okay, so let's talk about a citizen for a second, right? A citizen accused of a heinous crime, and it's a capital offense, right? They are convicted of the capital offense. Should that individual, right, like now they're convicted, found guilty in the court of law, should they have an opportunity to appeal, right? That like after that conviction, let's say like something went wrong in that court case, and then I'll have another crack at that nut. Like, should that be allowed?
So currently, as the United States sees it, appeals is not a right, but it is something that they try to push for because appeals are denied all the time. It is not a right, but you should have the
Should he have the
opportunity.
sure? Okay, no,
Yeah.
that's fine. I can work with that. Should he have the right to appeal? Do you agree that he should have the opportunity instead of being like dragged out of the courtroom and immediately like shot in the head?
If you
Should
have
he
if you have a legitimate reason for an appeal, yes, you should be granted an appeal. However, I believe that those should be limited for a
okay,
U.S.
that's fine.
citizen.
That works for me. That works for me. All right, Shade. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Jason entirely.
Okay, so you're saying that at the very least, whether they're actually granted an appeal hearing, right?
For a
or
U.S.
not,
citizen, right?
yeah, U.S. citizen, whether they're actually granted an appeal or not, that they should at least have the opportunity to begin other legal proceedings before like immediately being executed. Okay, right? Correct? Okay.
Well, I mean,
So okay, no, all right. Well, then
that is the standard for the most part. Yes.
sure. Okay, great, right? So then I at least Shade said previously that he'd be okay, right, with for individuals who are convicted of horrible, heinous crimes. He didn't list what they are, but sure, something awful that they could be deported, right, to
Yeah, I
El
think that-
Salvador. You said you were okay with that, correct, Shade?
I said with certain legal like pretense and change in the legal structure where they can actually appeal if they were to be
Okay.
imprisoned overseas, then I would be open to the idea for the worst capital offenders. I'm not saying that I am accepting it. I would need to see the layout and the recourse that somebody could take
Okay,
before just
but
openly.
I reject it on
deporting.
face.
Okay.
I reject
that's
it on
fine.
face.
Okay, but we're talking to Shade
Yeah,
now, and I'm,
okay.
I'm really curious what Shade's line here is. Like, you
Yeah.
say for the worst capital offenses. So where's that line? So say, what about rapists?
No, I would say if you have a life sentence.
Okay, so you would need a life
Whoa.
sentence.
There's
Okay.
a lot of people with life sentences in the country. We have one of the biggest prison populations. Why do you need to send them away to the country? We have prisons in the United States. We
Yeah,
spend millions of dollars in.
Yeah, we should be in prison more.
But yeah, sure. Yeah, so before then, right? Okay, so you're saying under certain circumstances, certain crimes, that's the case. So like, when do you say is and I know you're just coming up with this. I'm not asking you for like a big thorough answer because we're just coming up the top of my head, right? So I'm not expecting too much from you, right? But I'm asking like when are appeals done? Because as you can see with CCOT, right? Once we send them away, right? Like Obrego, he himself can't ask for appeal, or anyone else we sent can't ask for appeal. So at what point are you saying you're done with appeals and then you can be sent out of the country where you'll never get a chance again? Like if new evidence comes up, your case, right? New evidence. One second. Last thing. If new evidence comes up for your case, like years later, right? We've seen that happen, right? Where like maybe someone recants or new DNA evidence is found out, right? At that point, you can't actually like appeal. So at what point are you done? Let me know.
Well, that's why I said I would only be considerate if there are legal recourses in place at the place where they are imprisoned to come back.
But here's the problem, right? So one of the problems here is once you make any kind of loophole, it'd be like they have to be really, really guilty, or it has to be the worst of the worst. You're just going to create a state of exception where Trump is going to, in bad faith, just label anyone he doesn't like as the worst of the worst. And here, like even putting aside,
You're making up parameters that I haven't agreed to.
Well, no, whatever parameter you're going to put for who has this kind of like no appeal right, or
I never said that. I said they have the right to appeal,
or who has a right to appeal, but only in the El Salvadorian process, or whatever that is. That group of people, there's going to be some criteria, and what I don't know what Prime's exception is going to be to that, but mine is that whatever that criteria is, they're going to fit a shit ton of people in it in bad faith.
So just
like
real quick,
Nice.
there have been people who have been released from CCOT on appeals, like that.
Yeah, those are better.
It's highly
those are-
minimal.
and those
but it
are
did happen.
El Salvadorians, right? In El Salvador.
But
and so
I just wanted to just
Guys,
Sure,
guys,
sure. No,
put
that's
that
true.
out
Okay,
there.
no, that's good. That's true.
guys,
But I
we're
want to.
talking about a hypothetical where no details are completely fleshed out. I would need to see what the actual plans are, what the restrictions are, what the recourse is available to the people incarcerated
you would
in
say,
El Salvador.
Okay, so you would say that whatever the situation is, right? And again, we're not talking about like Abrego. We're not talking about specifically those Venezuelans. We're talking about U.S. citizens, right? You're saying that whatever that situation is, like even if you send them to CCOD, right? There must be an appeals process even in that other country.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that means that we could, right? Even in your in your best case scenario, right? In the situation the scenario you would design, right?
I'm not trying to design anything.
Sorry. In your preference,
you would accept,
right? In a situation you would prefer, you'd say that we could still deport these people, but even on foreign land, right? They would still be subject to the courts of the United States. That has to be a requirement.
There would have to be some kind of international diplomacy agreement between El Salvador and the United States. Yes.
Okay, great. So also within our Constitution, it says that like people living within our country have access to the same rights, and a due process that citizens have, right?
No.
So let's say not a legal citizen, right? We're talking about
it does not say that. It does not say that. There are different levels of rights depending on your immigration status. Even a legal temporary resident has less rights than a permanent.
You have basic but what Prime is saying is correct in terms of like if you were trying to like appeal from the same kind of thing, right? Let's say that a U.S. citizen is wrongly like deported because he's actually a U.S. citizen. He's not allowed to be deported.
Cannot be deported.
Right. But the process that he would receive, the wrongfully deported U.S. citizen, would be on all fours with a rightfully deported citizen because by virtue of putting him in the category in which he has additional rights would require some kind of process, right? And that process would have to be on all fours with the process of the person who was genuinely deported on basically good grounds. And just I guess the broader principle is for so
they don't.
So I'll give you so here are some examples for a crime. To convict a person of a crime, is there the same due process rights for citizen and non-citizen in the United States?
Depends on the crime.
Hold on, just real quick. Which crime would the non-citizen have less rights, and what rights would they lack that a citizen would?
So the severity of the crime. So I think we can all agree that illegal immigration is in fact a crime. It holds up to six months in jail.
No,
it actually does. 6 months in jail for the first offense, $5,000.
You don't want to say this because you'll get owned, so you just better drop it.
Oh, okay, dude.
Let Sparky let Jason say what he's gonna say. Let Jason say what he's gonna say. Give it to Jason. Jason has the mic.
There is criminality to it. That's why they call it.
No. Well, okay, it's a civil violation, right? Well, it's a civil violation like speeding, right? That's a civil violation.
No,
you aren't.
Civil violation. No,
you aren't.
It's a misdemeanor. It is.
You are. We don't call you a criminal. Listen, we don't call you a criminal driver.
They don't. They don't. But
laws, right?
It doesn't make
because
it
it's
any
a civil
violation.
It's different from a criminal violation. Those are two different
things like that. You can actually go to jail for not paying.
It's not part. Sorry, and
if you do any time in jail, that is a crime, buddy.
I might get the nomenclature wrong, so I'm going to defer to my friend Pisco, right?
No, you're right. You're right. No, some states are free to define traffic violations as civil. Some just define it as criminal. It's up to the state. So Prime is completely correct. It absolutely is civil. There are some, like crossing the border without inspection and admission, that's a crime. But being here illegally without status is a civil violation. It's always been civil. It's a long-standing precedent of the Supreme Court. It's a long-standing Supreme Court. Excuse me. I'm not done fucking talking. I'm not done talking. Yeah, I'm not done talking. So
filibuster all the time, man.
It's a civil matter. It's the long-standing Supreme Court precedent that's a civil matter. In fact, if it were a criminal matter, this would be even worse because, of course, if you have if it were a criminal action and he were be pursued to some kind of criminal remedy, then we're violating the Sixth Amendment. We're violating the right to have, the state actually pay for an attorney, the federal government pay for an attorney. There are much more due process rights that are.
It would be more expensive to deport a person if it was a criminal.
Well, this is just as a point of fact. This is why in certain cases, the administration initially brings criminal charges to these people, but then asks the court to drop those criminal charges because they realize that they will have to go through more steps.
Right.
And so they drop those or they try to get the court to drop those criminal charges. And interestingly enough, the people's lawyers, the accused illegal immigrants' lawyers, arguing that it stay criminal, not be dropped. It's a very interesting situation.
Yeah,
but
that one guy.
I forget his name.
Captain or something.
Yeah. But just as a temperature check here to Shade and to Sparky, do non-citizens have protections, the same protections as citizens under the Eighth
With
Amendment?
respect to crimes.
Under the what?
Eighth Amendment.
Eighth Amendment.
Cruel and unusual punishment. Can
Yes.
we do cruel and unusual punishment to non-citizens?
No.
No. How about for the Fifth Amendment? So the Fifth Amendment is like double jeopardy. Self-incrimination, etc.
Due process.
Everyone has a.
Okay, I just wanted
So
to.
with respect to crimes, right? You said that the due process rights are the same for crimes as between a citizen and non-citizen, right?
Well,
Same due process.
It depends. It depends. So if like for illegal immigration, of course, citizen can't be really charged with that. The due process that is owed is much lower than
there could be
a
some
murder
crimes,
trial, things like that.
There could be some crimes that citizens can't commit by definition, but if all else equal, right, a crime that both citizens and non-citizens commit, they're entitled to the same due process rights. Fair?
For the most part, except
Can you give me an example where it would be different?
Yeah, so like for immigration itself, the minimum standard of due process as like with
I can't. I'm a citizen and you're a citizen. We can't do an immigration crime, right? So put that aside,
we
right?
can't.
So like talking about like murder or like assault, right? Like in both of those, would a citizen and non-citizen have to go through the same process?
In theory, we should go through the same process. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Do you agree with that, Shade? That in both of those? Okay. Great. I'm making surprise.
And I believe it's the same. I believe it would be the same magnitude of evidence, beyond a shadow of doubt, things like that.
This is wrong, guys. This is wrong. Your intuition should tell you that even if you hate what they're doing, even if you hate the libs, what's going on here is fucking wrong. And counter to what, like,
no, that's not.
Counter to what, excuse me, let me finish. Counter to what Shade was suggesting before, where he could imagine some category of crime or whatever, where he could see deportation. The truth is, any kind of parameters that you would accept, they're not going to be presented to you ahead of time. The whole point of this is to do it quickly, fastly, shadily, and to not, present it before. We're not having hearings about it. We're not having a big law that Congress is passing. They're doing it quickly and as fast as possible, so we can theorize about what's going on. But in your soul, as true Americans, the violation of due process should strike you as one of the most dangerous things you could provide to the president, because what you're giving the president is the power to send people, even if it's illegally, right? So you're allowing him to, after having used illegal remedies to put someone in a particular place, there being no remedy to do anything about it. And that is dangerous as fuck. You must recognize that.
No. So
imagine
I understand.
if a liberal had that power. Imagine if President Obama had that power and could just
do
that.
These are the things so this is why I started off. We are in a constitutional crisis. Part of this is because of exactly what you're talking about. However, where the big order of contention that I have is the fact that either you're intentionally or unintentionally misrepresenting what due process means for an illegal immigrant in an immigration court, things like that. They are not the same. You do not get an individualized. You do not get an individual trial.
You do get an individualized hearing. Wait. Under the INA,
no, you get a habeas meeting. You get a.
Well, no,
you get a argue.
Habeas is separate. So habeas is separate. A habeas petition would involve you going to a court, a neutral arbiter, an Article 3 court, in fact, which is different. That's a more neutral arbiter than an immigration judge, right? A habeas petition would be before an actual Article 3 judge, and you would have a hearing
with an Article 2.
You can't do a habeas petition through an immigration judge. You cannot. The exclusive venue for a habeas. I don't know why you're just like guessing at this shit, man.
No,
come on.
I thought I read something about that.
Okay.
No.
Well, so, if you find it later, then let us know.
I just want to hammer this point down. You agree, Sparky, that it is a constitutional crisis. Whose side are you on? Do you think Trump should win the constitutional crisis, or do you think that, hey, maybe the courts are right and he should stop doing what he's doing?
They're both wrong, Pisco.
How are the courts
I think
wrong?
they are both wrong. I think Trump is exceeding his powers by not doing things procedurally correct, and I believe that the Article 3 judges are exceeding their powers by encroaching on foreign diplomatic
But they're
issues.
specifically they're being so sensitive to that, right? They're being so sensitive, right? The Fourth Circuit opinion is written by a Reagan judge who has been a long time,
and I really agree with that.
respecter.
The one that just came out today.
Yeah,
it was brilliantly written. Yeah, I like
agree.
it.
And you cited various parts, and you correctly cited them, of him saying you have to be careful, IJ. Or sorry, not IJ, district court judge. It complimented her and saying she was doing a good job, everything was fine, but you have to be careful because there are sensitivities here. So no one is not respecting the Article 2 prerogatives. Hell, even me, right? At the start of these proceedings, I said Trump could have a good argument here. We have to be careful about Article 2 rules. I'm not saying the court can do anything they want. The Supreme Court was very careful about that too. The district court, she said, right? I'm not even saying that it would be lawful for me to order Trump to request something. She said, right, I'm willing to be convinced that it would be unlawful for me to order the administration to request something, right? So no one here is intruding on the executive prerogatives. Everyone's being incredibly sensitive. And so in what sense can you say the Article 3 courts, they're the ones who are the bad actors in this constitutional crisis? This crisis is of
and
Trump's.
honestly, I think the district court, I believe that the district courts, and when we look at Sines and what's the other guy?
Borschberg or some what's his name?
Boberg or
Boasberg is in the other court, yeah.
Yeah, Boasberg. I believe that Boasberg and Sines are actually really, really skating that line and going over it here and there. In fact, that's why when I read the brief on the decision by the SCOTUS, when they sit there and say, and make sure to give deference to Article 2 powers, they are telling her, we're going to give you enough rope to hang yourself, and we're going to fuck you.
No. What they're doing there, and I think it's right for SCOTUS to do this, right? There's kind of three main briefs in the Supreme Court. The first is the appealer gives like the original petition, right? The
and then the response to it, yeah.
Then in response and then reply. So for the first time in the reply, the government really stressed this distinction between effectuate and facilitate. And you know what? That's something that wasn't raised lower before. And maybe there's actually a good argument that we should treat those words differently. I'm not even convinced that effectuate is synonymous with facilitate. They might be different words. They might mean completely different things and have different implications. So the court, they hadn't fully briefed the issue. So what they just said is like, district court, tell us what you mean by that. That is not them saying that the district court was doing something wrong or the district court wasn't respecting the executive prerogatives.
I look at that as a warning. The way I read that, it sounds more like a warning, because effectuate, I think, is stepping over the line. That's what they reference. And they're like, you need to pay deference to Article 2 powers. And that was their, because this is a summary. This isn't a full decision. I mean, it is literally just, yes, they do believe the due process needs to happen. That's what the SCOTUS deal says. And they go a little bit further and they say that they need to facilitate the release of Abrego Garcia.
But independently, should Trump ask for him back?
I actually think he should to follow the spirit.
Do you agree with that, Shade? Before we move on to Prime,
all right. What's the question?
Independently, what the court says, should Trump ask for them back? In like how as Jason said, in keeping with the spirit of the ruling, should he just? Would you say that he should ask for them to come back or him to come back?
I think potentially yes, but I think it's beating your head against the brick wall because he already said no right in front of him, Bukele.
No, but you both have to agree, right?
Okay.
In terms of who actually has the power here. You guys know that if Trump really wanted him back, he could get him back. Come on. It's the United States of America.
It's an El Salvadorian citizen in a sovereign nation.
It's the USA, bro.
There is that point too.
I do want to give it to Prime. Prime, go ahead.
Yeah. Let's try this. So, and this is again directed at Shade. I'm trying to get Shade back in here, right? Shade, would you agree that whether you think this is what Trump's current actions, right, the Trump administration's actions, whether you agree that's a good thing or a bad thing, would you say this is like pushing the boundaries of like our standard criminal or immigration process, right? That like this is new territory, whether it's good or bad. Would you say this is new? This is novel?
I would say this specific case is a clear outlier in thousands and thousands of illegal migrants that are being deported weekly, and that it's been very consistent that there have been outliers and infringement on constitutional rights throughout many administrations. And that's why my entire argument going into this is that this is complete selective outrage because it happens. Yes, it is.
Sorry, hold on,
it's not, bro. No.
Let Shade finish. Let Shade finish. Please.
No,
please.
It's selective outrage. Go ahead.
But no, I want to go back. Okay, so you're saying so you don't sending out these individuals, right, with minimal due process, if any, right? Simply a ICE stating, right, that they have the evidence that these people are gang members, and then sending them to this maximum security prison in another country where apparently, according to you, we can't get them back, right? Would you say again? It could be correct, but you would say this is new. I mean, we didn't see Biden do this. We didn't see Obama. We didn't see Bush do this. Well, we saw.
Didn't Obama
Actually, we
severely
saw Obama
abbreviate? Yeah,
do
come on.
kind of the same thing, but at
How?
Gitmo.
Oh, sorry. No, yeah, but hold on.
that's-
Gitmo, hold on. But Gitmo
that's a
is
great
U.S.
example.
territory. Gitmo
But,
is U.S.
yeah,
territory, right?
yes,
So, like,
and-
even
yeah.
they're sending them out. So
Yeah.
this is a step forward, right? So Gitmo was a because Bush did that first, right? But anyway,
Yes.
that was pushing the boundaries of Gitmo, right? And then from there, which is U.S. territory on a U.S. base, we're pushing it
And U.S.
again,
custody
putting
and U.S.
putting them outside of U.S. custody. You would say that, right? That's pushing the boundary.
No,
right?
it was still in U.S. custody, but it was pushing a boundary because they were
That's all I'm asking.
They were
I'm
holding
asking
people
if it's
off
putting-
U.S. soil.
Yes,
No,
I agree.
Prime
So
said,
that's
that's
all
what
I'm
Prime
asking.
said.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking if it's pushing the boundary. Okay, all right. So we're saying we're seeing Trump testing the grounds. Again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Okay, next Democratic president comes in, right? Now you say that this version is correct, right? That I'm going to give this power to the president.
No,
what if
I've literally
Sorry,
stated
sorry,
that I
no,
have
no.
issues with sending people
Oh, sorry.
directly to a prison
But like I said,
unless
hold
we're
on. Like
using
I
it
said,
for
hold on. No,
things
not
like the
this wasn't
Alien
to yours.
Enemies Act.
Sparky. Remember, I didn't say this is true.
Yeah.
I said this to Shade, right? Yeah, Shade. You're saying that you agree because I know you're different, Sparky, right? Shade, you're saying that you agree with this general power, even if maybe there was some inconsistencies with these specific cases, but the general ability to send, for instance, homegrown criminals out to another country. You're saying you agree with that, right?
No, that's not what I said at all.
No, you said that under certain conditions, right? You would do that if they did some horrible crime. Correct?
No. What I said is I would need to see a plan that still gives the criminals in El Salvador U.S. jurisdiction to bring them back in the case of an appeal or fighting the ruling. And that's that. I am not.
Okay, great. Gotcha. Then that, okay? You're saying that is okay. If the next
Potentially.
U.S. Potentially, yeah, all right. But let's say it is the case. You have a plan and you did approve it under Trump. Okay, the next U.S. president comes in, a Democratic U.S. president, which is almost certainly going to be the case. The next president is almost certainly going to be a Democratic president. They come in and they decide,
Agree with that.
I want.
I don't say that, dude. I don't know if we're gonna make it out of the next 2 months.
Yeah, but in any case, right?
let's take that issue aside for now and continue.
Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap this up, right? So the next Democratic president decides to push. Like now, what's happened here is that we've moved from U.S. criminals, right, or people doing criminal acts on U.S. territory being left in U.S. jails to now being put into foreign jails, right?
I never said that I would support that.
No. I
No
already gave
way.
you all of that. I said there was a plan that you did approve, and it happened in the Trump administration. Did you not hear that? I said that. Okay, right? That's part of the hypothetical, correct?
Yeah,
right?
but you have to present to me what that plan is before
I
agree to it.
I'm giving so whatever that plan might be, it has been presented to you, and then you have accepted it. That's what I'm saying. Whatever that brilliant plan in your head happens to be, or in someone else's head that you approve of, that has happened. That's the scenario.
Keep going.
Okay, great. Sure. The next U.S. president, once you have ceded so much ground, right, saying that now you can send these people out with, some sort of proper situation where they can appeal, right? Like, isn't it possible? Aren't you given the space for a Democratic president? And conservatives said Democratic presidents have politicized the Justice Department, right? Biden politicized the Justice Department and was using it against his political enemies, right? Then couldn't that president simply say, well, I find my political enemy, Trump Jr., because he's going to run for president, I don't know, right? Trump Jr. I find that he has done something heinous. And now I'm going to push it just a little bit farther. And I'm going to send him out, right? He's going to be within that jail. Now you wouldn't call it a serious crime being a political adversary, but the next Democratic president does. At this point, we have ceded so much territory that it makes it easy and within the scope of people's imagination. Of course, you would send that person away, right? He's a criminal. Democrats think he's a criminal, and so he should be
No, that's not what
thrown
I'm
out.
saying at all.
I'm not saying that's what you're saying.
Can
I'm
you?
saying that you're ceding the
Yeah.
ground. You're
I
allowing
do want
this to
to.
be the case.
No,
Yeah,
no, no, no.
It's a
Just
slippery
be-
slope.
I
is what
do
he's
want to get
rolling
New
with.
York
Sure,
State
sure,
a chance
it's
to
a
respond
slippery-
to that. Go ahead, New York
Sure,
State.
it's a
Yeah,
slippery
please.
slope, but just because I agree to one plan doesn't mean I'm going to agree to
I know
an
you don't.
extension of
I
the
know you
plan
won't.
in a
You
prior
won't agree to
administration.
the-
I would only agree
Exactly.
to the plan under a Trump
But-
administration with the
yes.
consideration that
I
a
understand.
Democrat could also wield that same power.
Of course. What I'm saying is that, like, once you've gone this far, right, the next step, right, always the problem, the slippery slope isn't the part that you agree with, right? It's when we get to the point that you don't agree with. The point of the slippery slope argument is to not
You're
go
dealing with
down that slope to
hypotheticals.
begin with, right? So that we never arrive at those awful consequences. Do you see what I'm trying to say here?
Sure. And again, this is why I would need to see the actual plan. It would have to be very, very specific, only relevant to
I'm
very,
saying
very
let's not even
specific
go that
criminals.
far. I'm saying that's best not
What?
to even go that far. Let's not even
Okay,
give them
sure.
that power.
Okay,
So we
you know
don't.
what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
You know what? If this is going to be the biggest issue, for example, in the next election, where Democrats can really leverage this against Trump by sending U.S. citizens to foreign soil, I think you make a valid point that there is a slippery slope problem to this, and again, it would have to take a lot of consideration on my end of a certain plan, but you make a valid point that I would not want that to be extended to a Democrat president either, particularly if they were going to then extend it
If
even
they're
further.
bad faith. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
I
So,
think-
look, I think Trump mentioned it at a whim. I mean, this is the guy that said he could nuke hurricanes, right? I think it's an interesting idea. I would need to see how that plan is actually laid out. To me, just on a moral level, I don't really know what the legalities are. You know, sending school shooters to a prison or rot overseas doesn't sound like the most morally corrupt thing in the world to me. But again, I would need to consider everything in a plan. I would need to consider
Can I
that
ask
the U.S.
why? Can I ask, like, why would you need to send them to prison abroad? Why is that
cheaper
important?
for the taxpayer. I don't know.
In what sense would it be cheaper? I mean, if what you're saying is that they are entitled to certain procedures, or they ought to be, presumably it would be much cheaper to have those proceedings occur in the United
No.
States, where all the evidence are, where all the witnesses could be for a potential appeals.
It wouldn't make
procedure,
any difference.
to allow for the people to, like, contact their lawyers. And so, isn't the obvious what's going on here? Isn't what's obvious
No.
what's going
No.
on is they're trying to avoid the application of U.S. law, right? They're trying to stop the U.S. law from applying.
And I would
That's why
disagree
they're
with
making- What other explanation? Do you think that it's a cost-saving measure?
Absolutely. It is cheaper to jail people in El Salvador than it is in the U.S. That is completely true.
I don't actually know. Can I ask? Do we think that Trump was right? And this is to spark in New York Shade. Do you think Trump was right to invoke the Alien Enemies Act?
Yes.
Why? Elaborate.
Because with especially like things like we saw over in Colorado, where we saw Trinidad Aragua take over entire apartment complexes and things like that, it needs to be treated for what it is. It appears to be an incursion, if you will. It's an invasion. It needs to be treated as such. And look, it's a quick and effective method to get rid of these people. People voted to get rid of illegal aliens. Now, I don't want all illegal aliens deported under that. I want the most egregious to be deported under that. Okay. Honestly, I think that Congress should go through. Congress creates courts. The only court that is constitutionally that it constitutionally exists is the Supreme Court. Congress makes the rest of them. I think they need to change some of the immigration policies and laws to affect proper defined due process for immigration, because I will say that it's not as defined as it should be. And I think a lot of these issues can be handled.
It's plenty defined. It's plenty defined, bro.
That's an opinion.
Oh, so what you're saying is, like, so we have too few immigration judges. Biden actually wanted to increase the amount of judges, and
Yes.
Trump has fired a bunch of them. These are not Article 3 judges. These are judges
Yeah,
under
they're
the
Article
executive,
2 judges, yeah.
under the executive branch,
Yeah.
and we have definitions for what procedures you're entitled to. Certain people are subject to expedited removal proceedings. Certain people are entitled to merits hearings. The process for these immigration cases is very well known. They've very, very well trodden. You are issued a notice to appear. That notice to appear, has pleadings. Those pleadings include the basis of your removability and who you are, and then you go and have a master calendar hearing, and that sets the date of your merits hearing. You gather evidence, you present it to an immigration judge, you can appeal it to the Board of Immigration Appeals. In some cases, you can go to the direct courts of appeals, and there's even limitations on which rulings are or are not judicially reviewable. The Attorney General can weigh in and have even additional limitations on this very more minimal procedure. So all of this is very well known. We know this process. Trump knows this process. The reason why he's doing these shady shit like the Alien Enemies Act, which by the way isn't helping in terms of quickness, because as the Supreme Court held, you at least need to have a habeas petition. What's a habeas petition? Well, you need to go to an Article 3 courts. You know where it's fucking slow? Article 3 courts. One of the reasons we have immigration judges is they're supposed to be faster than Article 3 courts. But what you've done now with the Alien Enemies Act is you've admitted that every one of these people is entitled to an Article 3 proceeding. And we already have a shortage of Article 3 judges. So the reason why they're doing all this is they're trying to find an illegal way to get rid of people as fast as possible without any oversight and get around the constitutional requirements and the statutory requirements. That's clearly what's going on here.
Can I ask you a question? Pisco, do you think that, in your honest opinion, do you think that Trump wants to send or wants to use the Alien Enemies Act on American citizens? Do you think that that's what they're trying to do? That's the goal?
That is, yes, that is their ultimate goal. Can
you elaborate on why you think that?
I believe that because Trump has said so, whether it's the Alien Enemies Act specifically, or he just invokes any old power, right? The Garcia case, as I was saying before, wasn't a deportation under the INA. It was just a complete lawless removal, right? It's not based and premised in any law whatsoever. It didn't, as the Fourth Circuit said, and I quote, I believe I'm quoting correctly, it didn't even have the semblance of due process. And so it wasn't an actual, so I don't know if it would be stylized as a removal under the Alien Enemies Act, but he is planning to do this, right? He is planning to wield it against U.S. citizens. Why do I know that? Exhibit A, he says so, all right? Exhibit B, every single power that he's been given or that he has or might have, he's used to the detriment of private actors in this country, including U.S. citizens. So, for example, with respect to the tax-free status, he's using that against Harvard. With respect to the Federal Reserve, he's threatening the Fed chair. With respect to what's going on in the universities, with respect to the protests in Palestine, he's withholding funding. With respect to the law firms, he's withholding security clearances. So every time there's any kind of power that he has, he abuses it against U.S. citizens. That's been his MO this entire time, and he says he's going to do it to U.S. citizens. So of course, you have to be a fucking idiot to think he's not going to actually plan to deport U.S. citizens. They're planning an expansion of Saqqat. They're planning thousands and thousands of more people to be in Saqqat. It's right in front of your fucking eyes, and you two are too fucking blind to just open them.
Do you guys want to? Well, first of all,
it's complete speculation and the worst case scenario that Pisco loves to dive into and just create more hysteria around what he's been so egregiously wrong about for months and months and months about Donald Trump. It's all just ridiculous.
Can you give us an example of where Pisco's been wrong?
Yeah, where have I been wrong?
What was the first sponsored comment you had on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I'll address that. I know exactly what they said. He said that I was wrong about the 14th Amendment case. No, I predicted that Trump would win the Section 3 case. Wait. Multiple clips of me. Actually, there are clips
Didn't you say Mahmoud Khalil? Didn't you say Mahmoud Khalil was not deportable? What happened on April 11th?
Yeah, that's an IJ decision. It's going to be appealed to fucking Supreme Court, dipshit. And by the way, the IJ who did it is serves under Pam Bondi. So I'm not fucking surprised. I'm not fucking surprised that a Trumpy IJ who serves under Pam Bondi said that he's deportable. And that's going to go up to the Supreme Court. I also, by the way, haven't made a prediction on that case, so I'm not wrong about that case. I think it's probably more likely than not that he'll win eventually. But I'm not it's not a super high confidence opinion. The comment that said at the beginning was that I was wrong about the Section 3 disqualification case. I'm on video, tape, multiple instances, including on this panel, saying that he was going to win that case. I said so with a high degree of confidence. I said that they were going to find some way to have Trump win, and it was my firm prediction that Trump was going to win greater than 85%. And so when he says I was wrong about that case, I wasn't wrong about that case. I predicted it would go the way it did. So I challenge you. Find me one thing that I was wrong about.
While you look that up, PrimeCayes, do you agree with Pisco's assessment when it comes to Trump's wanting to use the Alien Enemies Act or just his powers in general to deport U.S. citizens, criminal or not, that challenge his rule, if you will. That's something you believe that there's
Sure.
a decent probability of him doing,
Sure.
and why?
Okay. Yes, I believe so. And what some things that inform my decision is the language that's used, right? Going back to universities that our friend Pisco brought up, right? Talking about the protests, right? What do we say about the U.S. government say about those protesters? They say they're supporting terrorism, right? They're Hamas supporters. That some are saying maybe they're even providing material support for terrorism. Okay, now this isn't new language. Let's be clear. Biden was saying that previously, right? That was happening under the Biden administration, where they were, cracking down on these Sorry, I was about to say it myself, on these students, saying that they're terrorists, that they're anti-Semitic, right? Using that kind of language, right? And then
Well,
there was
some were
that
anti-Semitic. Some were anti-Semitic. Some were. Some people were anti-Semitic. They were blocking Jews from going to different places. And so I don't think that Biden deserves the shade. What we're seeing here is kind of different. I agree. Prime, I just want to say, I agree that you bring up this example. It's a perfect example because they say that these people are terrorist supporters and Hamas supporters, but their own internal documents show, for at least one case, that they determined that she didn't support terrorism and she didn't support Hamas. And notwithstanding the fact that their own internal memo says that that's what's true, they still grabbed her and they're still trying to deport her on that basis, even though they said themselves it wasn't true.
And there's that other case of that individual, that the man. Sorry, I can't remember his name, but he is on film talking against anti-Semitism. That during his legal proceedings, there was
one other case I want to bring up. There's one that's a great case to bring up, Prime, and I agree with that case. There's one other case I want to bring up in the Alien Enemies Act context, where someone was finally granted a hearing for their habeas petition for Alien Enemies Act, and they were asked, okay, all right, we finally have this petition, we have the hearing. Okay, government, what's your evidence? They literally provided nothing. Here, I'm not even saying nothing because the MS-13 stuff. Nothing. Zero.
Nothing.
So is it is it inconceivable that these people could be bad faith? No. In fact, not only is it not inconceivable, it is fucking happening in front of your eyes. And like I said before, you guys are blind.
Yeah. But before, again, he'll be bad cop, I'll be good cop here, right? So so looking at that, right? Looking at the language that's used now that because I hear from conservatives that they are free speech absolutists, right? I hear from a lot of conservatives. I don't know about you two. You're not. Okay, great. Hey, Shade, are you a free speech absolutist? No.
Absolutist, no.
No, okay, great. Oh, that's good to know. That's very good to know. But in any case, on the other end, though, that now that we've heard that protesters who are doing their exercising their lawful acts, right, are supporting terrorism, well, then that's an easy charge, right? That's an easy charge to say that these people who have said they support Palestine, they are against Israel, right? Another country, right? Well, that you are anti-Semitic. Remember that the U.S. Congress, they passed that law redefining what anti-Semitism was, and it was criticizing Israel. So you could say, well, you're anti-Semitic, right? That's a problem. You're supporting Palestine, which means Hamas in their eyes, right? That's an issue. That means you're supporting terrorism. And so, guess what? We're going to arrest you. We're going to deport you. Such out of this country. Yeah, that's absolutely a possibility.
And they don't even
that's an easy line.
Should Congress impeach Trump?
They don't
at this
even
point?
need to exercise the power. Let's just go ahead. Sorry.
Should Congress and I because I believe Jason and I believe Shade, you both have admitted that the Trump administration has violated the law, at least when it comes to Garcia and his initial deporting. So the question,
how I thought they violated the law.
Yeah. So the question is this impeachment worthy? Should Congress impeach President Trump?
No, because that would have made literally every other president that has made these erroneous errors deporting people also impeachment worthy. It's ludicrous.
So just be clear, if there's a direct order from the Supreme Court, let's say this comes back up to the Supreme Court and they have to clarify even more, and they do so in abundant detail, and the Supreme Court says, you must do X, and Trump does not do X, will you think that's impeachable?
That could be an impeachable offense, sure.
Okay.
Depends on what X is.
Right.
Are we all in agreement with that? Everyone?
No. Sparky says it depends. That the Supreme Court could say, do something, and Trump could say, fuck no, and you wouldn't support the impeachment.
If they violate Article 2 limits and everything else, yes.
Who the president
see
gets to decide. So you don't agree with Marbury versus Madison? It's emphatically the province and duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. That's what Marbury versus Madison
I believe
decided.
they have the right to say whatever the law is, but even you state that the Supreme Court can get things wrong, correct?
Wait, they can get things wrong 100%, but who gets to decide?
Okay.
Who's the final arbiter?
At the end of the day, that is the question, isn't it? Because
Well, so
yes,
would you
we would
support
say
the
that
president? Would you
we would
support
say
the president for
that
deciding
the
for
Article
themselves?
3 is supposed to do the interpretation of things, but if the Article 3 interpretation is considered wrong, and you could actually have Article 1 and Article 2 branches go, no, that's not how that goes. That's not what we meant.
This
things
is so
like that.
stupid. So if it were the case, for
Do you
example,
believe in
if Joe
the
Biden
separate
just
but
said
equal
that-
branches of the government?
I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what you mean by that.
Who checks Supreme
So
Court?
the Supreme Court has multiple checks. Supreme Court has multiple checks.
Yes.
Congress principally can. I'm going to answer your question. You ask a question, I'm going to answer it fully. So people know I know the answer. I'm going to answer it. So Congress can make a check by not funding the Supreme Court, by limiting its appellate jurisdiction, by doing other kinds of jurisdiction stripping, by adding seats to the Supreme Court, by impeachment of judicial officers. So there's many ways in which there can be checks. The executive branch, obviously, there's the intuitive. The executive branch has to enforce a lot of these rulings, but that's my question for you. My question is, if it's the case that the Supreme Court gives a direct, clear order to the President Trump, and President Trump disagrees and says, I don't agree with the Supreme Court, I'm not going to follow it, will you support his impeachment or not?
It depends on what that decision is. I can't sit there because look, this wouldn't be the first time this has happened in American history. Looking at Andrew Jackson, the falsely brought forward quote is what Madison made his decision, and I watch him enforce it. It's not actually. We don't know if he actually said that. Yeah, Marshall. Sorry, but this isn't a first time thing that it could possibly happen. If the Supreme Court if they fuck up a decision and people can disagree with the Supreme Court. Yes.
You would never say this of Obama. You would never say this of Biden. If Biden just
Bullshit.
blatantly violated, if Biden,
I hate the government, bro.
Dude,
Hold on. Jason, just
up,
if I may, because I'm trying to understand your stance here. So if the Supreme Court had come down with a decision ordering Biden to stop doing something to stop a program that he had in place, and Biden said, you know what? I don't think the Supreme Court actually has jurisdiction, and I think that they have overstepped. So I'm just not going to listen to the Supreme Court. Would you have opposed his impeachment?
If it steps on the plenary rights of the President of the United States, the sole executive, under Article 3, yes, I would support that.
Do you decide?
Who has decided in the past?
The court.
Everyone can have an opinion, right?
It's emphatically the
court is not the sole arbiter of truth, dude. That's not.
I'm not saying they're the sole arbiter of truth, but they decide what the law is. That's Marbury versus Madison.
No. They interpret the law. They decide the interpretation of the law.
It's emphatically the province of the Judicial Department to say what the law is.
And
that's
that
Marbury
has been.
Madison. Do you agree with Marbury versus Madison? Yes or no?
Yes, overall, yes. But
okay, so
at the same time, they can still get wrong, and you can.
I agree they can get it wrong.
Unconstitutional. If it's unconstitutional, you do not have to follow constitution.
But who decides whether it's right? Who gets the ultimate say over whether it's right or wrong?
I don't know, Pisco. Who? When a soldier
is given, the Supreme Court.
Well, see, I say it's not always the Supreme Court because a soldier in the field can be given an unlawful order. They can decide to not follow it because it is unlawful.
Who decides
and that'll get tried out in the end. That'll get tried out in the end.
Who decides whether it's unlawful? Who decides whether it's unlawful?
What would happen in this case is a soldier who disobeys a direct order, citing that I do not follow unlawful orders. It would go to the UCMJ. The UCMJ would find out whether that order was lawful or not, and a ruling would be issued. But I do have a question for Prime real quick, and then I got to read some super chats, so we got to get to the closings, and I'll let you guys do your thing. Prime, do you think we've reached the threshold now? I'm talking like today, that you think that President Trump should be impeached by Congress?
Good question. Okay, first let's talk about two ways. The practicality, right? Practicality of it, no, right? Like if there was going to be a scenario where he could be impeached, where this could actually lead to anywhere, right? Well, then no. We haven't reached that. Like, it would have to be something so outlandish. You'd have to lose so much support among Republicans to actually turn the tide. Like, Nixon being told, like, you got to go, by Congress. We're not nowhere near that. So, like, why even bother? That would be my first answer there. Second, legally, I don't think. I don't think he's really. No, sorry. I think he's done multiple things which I very much disagree with, but I don't know if I would say, hey, like, let's make some sort of serious push for impeachment. I don't know if there's much use to that, which goes back to my practicality argument.
Okay,
So
and
I say no.
Pisco, do you agree,
Yeah,
disagree?
100%. There's so much of what he's done has been impeachable so far. By the way, even just the mass pardoning, just like I said, the impeachments of Biden at the end of his family preemptive was impeachable. Obviously, his mass pardoning of the terrorist thugs on January 6th was impeachable as well. But just to put that aside, on this matter alone, he's already violating court orders with respect to the actual deportation and compliance with the facilitation, as well as the Boasberg situation. So to the extent that Donald Trump, which I believe he does, has a supervisory role over that action, there should be impeachment proceedings initiated. And for violating the Supreme Court, there should be impeachment proceedings initiated.
Even if it won't go anywhere, like Prime says?
As a legal matter, you should, and I think that it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You couldn't bring impeachment proceedings unless you have at least a majority of the House that say that it's to vote, because Mike Johnson's never going to do it because the Democrats say so. And so to the extent that you can bring it, it's kind of I don't get to decide if they're brought. If I could decide that they're brought, I would say that they should be brought. 100%.
So,
they should be aired out. There should be investigatory fact finding.
So you're saying then, Pisco, that we should at the very least like put the papers for the articles of impeachment.
1,000,000,000,000%. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, then if that's the low bar, sure.
Low bar. They're violating court orders. They're violating.
No. I'm not arguing with you. I'm not arguing, friend. I'm just saying that that if that's what we're arguing about, then I would agree with you. It's just that I just don't. I mean, I know it's not going to go anywhere. That was right, but fair.
Yeah, I mean, because we're in a cult, unfortunately, and what we have here, right? The fact that we're even having a debate about this shows you how far we've fallen. Like, we're actually having a debate of under what conditions we should deport U.S. citizens, under what conditions they should have no procedural due process rights, under what conditions does it make sense to outsource our immigration.
You guys remember when we used to debate about xenogenders? And that was the biggest topic of the day.
This is crazy, right? We are the fucking frog in the boiling pot, and we're having arguments about basic premises and underpinnings of our law. The federal courts are all but begging us, and to say they're quoting Abraham Lincoln and these lofty quotes, fucking Reagan appointees, to say this is fucked up, and we have to sit around and it's all normal. Of course, we've crossed the threshold of impeachment.
You changed my mind, Pisco. Yeah. You changed my mind. I'll accept your argument. Yeah, fair enough.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, with that, let me get through these super chats because I got to get paid, boys and girls, right? If we're going to watch, because look, we're in a race against which going to destroy the country first, right? These deportations and the breaking of the rule of law, or the tariffs, which will bankrupt us. And place your bets, gang. We'll find out. But let me read some of these super chats. Thank you for the super chats. I really do appreciate you. If you've enjoyed this stream, like the stream, subscribe, all that shit, okay? And I'm going to give each of these lovely individuals an outro in a second here where they can kind of give their closing thoughts and tell you where they can find them. I have a link to all their channels, their X's, and stuff like that in their Twitters, right? Their X's sounds weird. In the YouTube description, right? So be sure to click on them and give them a follow. But let's get through these super chats because, again, your boys got to get paid. So $10 from Nicholas Worthamku to say nothing, which based. Thank you for the $10 to say nothing. I really do appreciate that. $20 from Alexander Rin. Why not just have a public vote to send people to labor camps? 51% decides, and Trump counts as 49%.
Because the rights are supposed to be in opposition and contradiction to popular sentiment. That's why they have rights, right? If the rights were just to protect popular people or unpopular people, we wouldn't have rights, right? The whole reason we have criminal rights is to protect people who are very fucking unpopular, like terrorist scum and fucking people who stormed January 6th. The whole point of these rights are to stand in contradiction to popular sentiment. So you're missing the whole point of even having individual liberties like the free speech, right? Free speech is not meant to protect popular speech. And so when you're even asking that question, it shows that our entire framework of civics and education has failed you, sir or madam.
I do like the $20, though, so thank you for that. $5 from Testicle Johnson. Show me in the Constitution where it says a dog can't play baseball. Fair enough. Thank you for the $5.
It's not in the rules.
$10 from Education is Important. Says, is Trump the master of leverage? If so, should it not be easy to facilitate his release? Or is Trump weak? Thank you.
They're coping, right? They're completely coping when they're like, I don't know if you can bring him back. You guys are full of shit. If you wanted him, you could get him.
He's supposing
I
brings
just don't care, to be honest.
countries
Facilitate.
He can
I don't
supposedly bring
care.
75 countries to the table to negotiate tariffs, right? Which is lie. Like he didn't actually do that. He hasn't
The
actually
argument is to
violated that list,
facilitate,
right?
not
But
You
it-
guys
but
sound
it-
like
but
such wait.
but
You guys
if
sound like
but if
such
he can
weasels
do
when you
that,
say that. You
then
don't understand that? You sound like such weasels when you
Sound
say,
like
"I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?" You guys like no
Just the
one
guy who
believes
built
you.
his career on destiny.
Like just to be clear, no one believes you guys when you say that shit like that. No one believes that Trump couldn't get him. You guys sound like fucking weasels when you
except
make
for the
that
majority
argument.
of the
I'm saying
United
he
States.
shouldn't.
The majority of the United States thinks that he can't get the fucking guy back. What's your evidence of that?
I think the majority of the United States doesn't want him back.
Okay.
Wait. What's your no? That wasn't the question, you fucking idiot. The question was, do you think a majority of the country thinks that he can't get him back, not that they want him back?
That's not what I commented on. I commented on that the majority of the Americans don't want him back.
Okay, so if the majority of the country says you shouldn't have gun rights, you still have gun rights?
No, that's not what I said either.
Okay, so don't you think that rights are supposed to be like counter to the
They got more money.
excesses and the tyranny of the majority?
This is about facilitation. What are you talking about?
No,
he's
we're talking about
extending the
So
argument.
you're a Democrat. You're all about
my
the tyranny
God.
of the majority.
Oh my God! No, apparently you guys are. Apparently you guys are like contemplating that
No,
we fucking
I
send people.
actually,
to,
I've been pretty down the
actually, no,
line.
what do you disagree with us on? Wait, what do you actually disagree with us on?
So I just disagree that we should bring him back. He's under the custody of a foreign nation, not our problem. Illegal
Wait, you said-
alien.
you-
Don't want him here.
I will. So in my edit, what I'll do is I'll superimpose a clip of you saying he should bring him back, and you just said he should not bring him back.
No,
I'm
I've
gonna
never
put
said
up
that he
there.
should bring him back.
So I will produce the clip, and it will be embarrassing for you because you'll
I
say
don't care, man.
Trump should bring him back, and now you just said Trump should not bring him back.
No,
We'll
he
put
should
those
not bring
together.
him back. I said
Okay.
that he deported him illegally. No, he should not
Have
bring
fun. You're going to be in the intro, and it'll be
Okay.
Okay,
juxtaposed.
cool.
Then
Cool story,
10
man.
pounds, 10 pounds from Rizius. Thank you for the 10 pounds. I am confused. If something is done illegally, isn't then the point to repair the damage done by the said illegal action? But the MAGA
That is
folk
one thing we didn't talk about.
think
though.
is okay to do nothing to remedy their own illegal action. So
What
I
is the
guess the
remedy?
question I would have just to expound on this, because I am really curious, if the Trump administration fails to facilitate the release of Garcia from the El Salvador prison, should they be held in contempt of court?
Yes, obviously. I mean,
No,
they should go to. There should be criminal investigations for kidnapping and torture at this point. So yes,
That's hilarious.
We
That's
have one of these
hilarious.
people. No, I'm not joking. And I'm
That's
completely not
funny.
joking.
Do you guys not
completely-
agree that
I'm completely not
that
joking.
the CCOT is torture? Do you guys
No.
not agree?
No,
I haven't been
Do
shown.
you know
evidence
what the
that it is.
conditions are in CCOT?
I don't
Right?
care.
Do you know?
there are
Oh,
better
you don't care.
conditions
Oh, so
than
you don't even
federal
care.
prisons in the
So
United
it's
States.
not even that you're.
It's El
You're not-
Salvador.
So you're
It's
not
El
even. hold on,
Salvador. It's
hold on,
not
that's not what I
American
asked. I didn't
fair.
ask if you cared. I asked, like, do you know the conditions? Right? You're saying
Yes,
it's not
I have
torture.
seen
Okay. I
think
documentaries on it.
Okay.
I just don't care. It's El
Okay.
Salvador, not
Yeah, you don't
America.
give a
Oh,
fuck
okay,
'cause you're an
okay. So,
immoral
Ryan,
fuck.
do you think Shade? Do you think it's torture?
No.
Okay, right.
Okay.
So having
If,
a hundred.
if CCOT is torture, then so are half the federal prisons in the United States.
Yeah,
Or
that's true.
it's
Yeah, a lot of our
fucking
prisons are torture. Hold on.
secondary.
A lot of our prisons are torture, but I'm talking about CCAT specifically. So having being 100 more men within one cell, crowded on metal bunks, right? No mattresses, no pillows, 23 hours a day, right? With just like one toilet there for them all to use. With the lights never going off, right? Being herded outside by guards and beaten, right? If they don't comply immediately. You've seen the pictures, right? Them being brushed
You're
out.
describing
If
a
you're
US
even
prison.
slow, they beat
No,
them
we're
immediately.
not.
Yeah.
That's not legal in the United States to do that. It's
Yeah,
not
even
legal.
that's
is
not legal in
illegal in
the
the
United
US.
States. This is
It is
worse than the United States. In the United States, it's pretty fucking bad, right? So you're saying
Yes,
none of
that's
that
pretty
sounds
decent.
like torture to you? None of it.
No, I think they're imprisoned inmates in a sovereign country that is not under jurisdiction.
Hold on,
of
that
the
doesn't,
US.
Calling
that doesn't
crying
mean
for the
that, hold on,
Jan
that's not.
Sixers?
Wait a minute, that's not what the definition of torture is. That it's in a different country. I'm asking if that behavior, right? If those practices are torture under
I
international.
don't think
convention.
waterboarding
No.
is torture. So you
Okay,
got
no,
a you got a
okay,
very
okay,
high
cool.
level.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to
Okay,
know.
okay.
I'm a
Good deal.
GWAT
Move on.
guy.
Let's
I'm a
keep
GWAT
going.
guy,
Let's keep
so-
going. $10 from Artemis Fowl. I don't know why Pisco claiming Trump asking Garcia's return is a minimum to demand from the ruling, when we all know Pisco would never accept that action as satisfactory to his position. Then
Well, I admit it. Wait, no, it's not. So Artemis Fowl is like one of the dumbest. I'm glad that he gives away his money. He's too actually dumb to have money. I'm scared what he's going to do with his money. But he says that we all know that Pisco say wouldn't be sufficient. I literally said I don't think it would be sufficient. I think I said it 3 times. Prime had to remind New York Shade that I said I believe it would be insufficient. And so congratulations, you just waste your money on like I don't know.
Donating to me is never a waste, sir. First of all, okay. Five more. He's gonna give me more.
Follow like even basic argument. Like none of you can even track the conversations. You guys say contradictory things all the time about whether you should deport people, whether you shouldn't deport people, whether you should bring them back, whether you shouldn't. And it's like even your followers can't track basic things that are in the
argument. We've been very clear that due process is required. That is our argument.
What is the remedy, Pisco? What is the remedy to the situation? What is your remedy?
My remedy?
Yes, your remedy.
Well, the Supreme Court said the Supreme Court said to facilitate his removal from custody in El Salvador. That's the remedy.
So just basically trying to get them to remove from custody.
Yes, trying.
Yeah.
Something which
I agree with that.
You guys won't provide the definition of what trying is.
Why would you back at all?
Wait. Why would you agree with that and say you shouldn't bring him back? You think I agree that the remedy
because
should be
he wasn't here legally in the first place, and the Supreme Court didn't even say that. The only person that has said that is Judge Sines.
No, the Supreme Court said to facilitate his return.
No, it didn't. It said facilitate his release.
But it also, in addition to saying his release, wait. In addition to saying his release from custody in El Salvador, which I quoted, it also upheld that portion of the district order which refers to return. So in both contexts, it absolutely does ask for, because it's upholding part of the district court's order, you can read the amended district court order. It will say what I'm representing it as. At a bare minimum, they have to facilitate the release from custody.
Supreme Court's order.
Let's keep making me money, gang.
Jesus
$5 more
Christ.
from Artemis Fowl. Thank you for the $5, sir. Prove that Garcia's on that contract, Pisco. You threw it out there. Don't try and claim the contract as a key if you can't even prove he's on there.
No. So the contract represents the relationship between President Bukele and President Trump. That is there to show that in general there's a pattern and practice of the United States having some level of directorial control over what occurs in those prisons. And the fact that they're establishing this relationship, whether or not there's probably no contract with specific prisoner names on there. That's an absurd standard to hold. What it demonstrates, though, is this isn't a case of like where some prisoners in Russia and we have a kind of oppositional relationship. It isn't a case of like where it would jeopardize, the international diplomatic relations in this context. What we have here is a subcontracting relationship. That's what the agreement represents. Not that there are specific fucking prisoners with their names written down on a specific piece of paper. You fucking
It's a really
idiot.
dumb fuck thing to think.
$5. We're not done with Artemis Fowl yet. Thank you for the $5. Pisco can't even define what facilitate means. Why is he demanding his opponent answer a question he can't even define?
So I go back to, so I'm not going to just keep on referring you to the actual stream. If you're not watching the stream, I can't help you, but you can go back into where this entire thing started, where I do actually define what I mean
actually
with the term
does.
facilitate.
I'll back him up there.
And so you can just get fucked. You don't watch the debate. You're a stupid piece of shit, Artemis Fowl. And I'm glad. Keep spending money because you keep getting blown the fuck out. Every single one of your comments has been completely debunked.
$5 from Ben Riley. Okay. The highest court in the land, after taking everything into account, said that his removal was illegal, 9-0. So everything else is a distraction. Thank you for the $5. $5 more from Artemis Fowl. Why was Garcia driving 7 illegals through Tennessee with no valid driver's license and on the FBI terrorist watch list? I think
who cares?
This. $5 from Artemis Fowl. I am happy that Pisco believes that time travel credibility issues are a thing. So any crime in the future damages credibility.
No. So just to be clear, if you have deceptive, corrupt conduct at one time equals 1, that is some evidence that is probative of past conduct, right? So for example, let's say that you have someone who committed sexual assault. Let's say Larry Nasser, and you find out that he committed sexual assault at time equals 2. Well, that is some reason to think that there's, it's some basis of evidence to suggest that this is a pattern going back. I'm not saying that it's dispositive. I'm not saying that it resolves the case conclusively. What I'm saying is it's relevant. It was an aside to show, hey, this guy had a corrupt relationship with a fucking prostitute that he was banging on the side while giving confidential information. Maybe that bears on whether we should take him seriously. He was suspended. Those are facts that go to his credibility, and it's not a time travel situation. It goes to his character for truthfulness.
$5 from Artemis Fowl. Pisco's right. The Biden FBI ordered the Tennessee Highway Patrol to release Garcia. So yeah, they couldn't charge him for human trafficking. Thank you for the $5. $5 from Go Away Enhancer. You have literal government merchandise in the corner of your room, Sparky. You don't hate the government. You hate liberals and foreigners.
No, I love my country. I hate my government.
And then
We
finally,
love this government.
$10 from Alexander Wren. My comment earlier about popular votes that Pisco jumped on was ironic, as it seems to be that the MAGA crowd desires such a justice system, but only so long as Trump is 49% of the vote. Thank you for the $10.
They were joking, Pisco.
Yes.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, I jumped
It's
on you.
okay.
But that is what people have said before.
This is why we need due process for the super chatters, so you don't take an innocent man
I'll take
out.
the L. Wait, I'm happy to take the L on that. I didn't get that. I was just fucking triggered. But the reason I said it was because in my Tim Pool conversation, he actually said like, "Oh, I think that it's up to the body politic to decide what the First Amendment rights are," and I'm just like, "Well, that's just kind of stupid." But I apologize to that specific person.
It's okay. Okay, and with that, closing statements. We're going to start with Prime. We're going to end with Pisco. Prime, take it away. Tell people who you are, where they can find you. Closing thoughts. Go ahead.
Hello, hi. Thank you, Wick, for inviting me here, and thanks to everyone who participated. Right, it's nice seeing you again, Sparky, and Pisco, obviously my main man, and nice to meet you, New York Shade. Hopefully we can work together in the future. I'll send you a friend invite.
Yes, sir.
I'll do it in a second. I have debates and stuff myself, right? And we argue. It's a lot of fun and a lot of big chaos. So if you enjoy that, consider coming to my channel. My name is PrimeCayes, PrimeCayes. Say it again, PrimeCayes. You can find me on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and all that stuff. Love to have you. And again, thank you, Wick, for being so kind as to invite me.
Of course. No, thank you. Really appreciate you. Aircraft Sparky. Same thing. Who you are, what do you do, where can people find you?
I'm Jason. I'm not really doing content creation right now. I come and do a couple debates here and there. But most part, man, I'm playing those instruments back there and making cartoons. And maybe I'll publish some of it once I get it all dialed in. But yeah, that's about it. As far as all this goes, look, I agree. He was deported illegally because they sent him to the wrong place. They should have went through the process, gotten the withholding order removed, and then they could have removed him to El Salvador. I do not know if that contract be held at CCOT. No one here does. And those who made that assertion failed to bring forth any evidence of that. So it is what it is. What has been talked about on it has been more about, there's 300. It's going to be 300 Venezuelans for $6 million a year for a holding period of 1 year renewable. But really, the big concern is Pisco is partially right here. Okay, so is Prime. When they talk about the slippery slope type thing, what happens when a Democrat, dude, I don't like this stuff. Okay, if you're going to deport someone, now I think that some people on certain social media websites such as Pisco and the WIC have basically screamed due process, and I think they're gaslighting. I think they're lying. Pisco will say on X, return, but he won't say it here because he knows he's lying on X. It is what it is. It's okay. Look, we have differences of opinion. Come together and realize at the end of the day, we're all. We may not agree on everything, but goddamn, I love my country. I hate my government, and you should.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Check him out, gang. Links in the profile. Next up, New York Shade.
Yep, Wick, thank you again, and big shout out for the recent appearance on Tim Pool. Very, very well deserved, and I guess Pisco, you as well too. Thank you for everybody joining the panel here. Nice meeting all of you. Look, I think I've. And yeah, Prime, you as well. And I saw your request come through. I'll accept in a second. Look, my argument has been consistent in the same, in the sense that this is selective outrage because we have clear historical precedent that when mass deportations happen, on the outliers, mistakes do happen. And to say that one of those cases is an impeachable offense is just objectively absurd. I agree that everybody should be getting the due process that they deserve. And I agree that Trump made an erroneous error in this deportation. But that being said, it is an erroneous error. He has a mandate. I absolutely want the 10 million illegals that were allowed over the border to be deported under this 4-year administration. But it just needs to happen with due process. And that's it.
Okay, no, thank you for being here. You can find a link to his Twitter in my profile, or my the description of my YouTube. Check that out. Give him a follow. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate you. Last but certainly not least, Pisco. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pisco Liddy on Twitter, Pisco's Hour on YouTube, Pisco on Twitch. We're in a constitutional crisis, folks. You might not want to hear that. You might not want to think that it's an emergency. It absolutely is an emergency. I'm warning you now. Things are going to get worse, not better. This situation is one of the most alarming moments in Trump's second presidency so far, in that he is trying to create a loophole where U.S. law does not apply. He's telling you he's going to say it applies to U.S. citizens. His surrogates are saying that it should apply to U.S. citizens. He is not even giving the basic sort of due process rights or substantive rights that these people are entitled to. They're making mistakes, unfortunate mistakes, not just in this case with respect to accusations of being tren de Aragua. They're abusing power in other areas. We mentioned the universities withholding money, revoking statuses, revoking clearances just based on political beliefs, announcing political investigations into former bureaucrats that politically, said that the election wasn't stolen. This is all in front of you. That's all happening right in front of your eyes. And the comparisons to deportations of U.S. citizens in other instances is absolutely absurd. No one is taking issue with the fact that a lot of deportations are happening in this context, right? It's not an issue with mass deportation or even the number of deportations. Obama, by the way, was heavily criticized for the number of deportations. And so, New York Shade's contention that he wasn't criticized for his deportation policy
Not
is
what
just
I said.
actually absurd. It's just you did it before. None of you guys remember things that you say in this debate.
It's deportations of U.S. citizens.
I encourage. So in terms of the deportations of U.S. citizens, the erroneous deportations of U.S. citizens, those aren't mass that happened. You listed 4. And that some 700 people were detained. Well, U.S. citizens are being detained right now under Trump. If it's actually erroneous, that's one thing that it's not impeachable. If it's actually a mistake that they sent out a U.S. citizen, those things actually happen. Sometimes people don't even know that they're U.S. citizens. That is possible. It's conceivable. You might not think it. That's because you don't know the laws around naturalization and citizenship. And so that's not the problem. The problem is, what is this all about? This is about authoritarianism. This is about willfully defying court orders. There's already a finding by multiple findings, district court, that they're violating orders. There's one, the Boasberg opinion shows that there's probable cause, and he's going to hire a prosecutor, right, if they don't purge their contempt. So we're in the thick of it, folks. This is absolutely a critical moment. The Fourth Circuit is signaling the warning signs. They're saying all the things that this is a warning sign. The Supreme Court, right? There's no noted dissent by Clarence Thomas, no separate statement from Alito on an immigration case. That's fucking unheard of. Why? Because they're spooked. Even this Supreme Court, 9-0 some of these decisions. We're in the fucking thick of it. And if you don't believe that, if you think that this is not going to extend further, that this is not going to get worse, then you are blind or you're in the cult. But believe me right now, you can't say that you weren't warned. Shit's coming down the pipeline, and you have to be ready to decide whether or not you're man enough, woman enough, or I don't know, person enough to see it, recognize what it is, and call it out.
Okay. Thanks for being here. You can find a link to his channel in my YouTube description. Check him out. And with that, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be talking with Gibbs and a bunch of others about the economy. So check us out then. We'll see you then. For now, bye, everyone.
Later.
Bye.